I'm basically a media critic on my YouTube channel. I also do Twitch and D Live and stuff like that, but mostly YouTube. And I don't know. I mostly just mock the media, call them out when they're obviously like gaslighting, and try to throw in some comedy here and there and make compilations. That's basically it. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and looking forward to getting into it with you guys. It should be interesting.
Happy to finally have you on. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Brenton. How you doing?
Hey, doing great. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Brenton Lengel. I am a playwright, poet. I'm the Ringo-Nominated comic creator of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. The second issue I've been informed the printers have printed it and they're shipping it out. So for those of you who backed it on Kickstarter, awesome. Yeah, I am a former activist with Occupy Wall Street. On my YouTube channel, I do a bunch of live debates, and I talk about philosophy, anarchism, Buddhism. As far as like my political views, I don't consider myself left or right, though my views tend to line up more with the left than the right these days. I would say just call me a classicist or
You seem to be breaking up a little bit, Brenton. Is it okay if I get back to you?
As far as
Brenton,
Brenton?
we're gonna have to mute him for now and get back to him in a little bit. If somebody could, if you could message him and help him get those audio problems resolved, that'd be wonderful. Next, I'm gonna throw it over to Polar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Polar. I'm a high schooler. I like to do debates online. This is literally what I do with my free time because I have no friends, and I'm here. I'm here to have some fun. Yeah, go follow me at twitch.tv/Polarsworld.
Wow, I had no idea you were a high schooler. I have to say, sorry, I know not supposed to jump in, but that's impressive given the discussions that I've had with you. I had respect for you, and it's gone up even further knowing that you're only in high school.
Vadim, you're now going
We
to
got
go.
virtue here, guys.
You're going to go into the Iron Maiden for interrupting somebody else. That's
Okay,
disgusting.
I promise I won't do it again.
Yeah, you're going to go into the Iron Maiden, going to be tortured in front of the
I
for
thought
the
if
peasants.
it was nice, it would be okay, but all right.
Kind
That's the end of that.
Well, number one, this is a debate panel. Niceness is also banned. Okay. You cannot find understanding. This is just to make me money. Next, we're going to throw it over to IPA.
Yes, Polar, on that note, since it is my turn to talk. Yeah, yes, you are absolutely one of the most intelligent 17-year-olds I've ever fucking met. So that said, I'm IPA a lot, or IP a lot, depending on which way you want to read that. I do D&D on Mondays with Mr. Tiberius, SuspectSushi, Endernax, Red Grey Blues, and Spectre of Cynicalism. So we do that on Monday nights. I have a background. My background primarily is in psychology and family therapy. I went to grad school for family therapy. So when it comes to psychology topics, that's kind of my wheelhouse. My wife and I do marriage advice on Wednesdays as well. We've been married for 13 years, together for 17 years. I apologize. I am not as snarky or entertaining as Wake the Beast, but I am here to take his place for this first topic. I'm a libertarian, somewhere between classically liberal and minarchist. Really, I'm just here to make fun of both sides.
Wonderful. I'm happy to have you here. And again, Wake the Beast will be here in about 1 hour. And I really appreciating you coming in to fill in for him last second like that. I can't wait to just have you on a future show for the full episode. Okay.
Appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Let me go over the rules quick because there are some rules in here. We are not an open server with no rules. This is a Burns Tatership. And if you don't like it, then I will throw you out the window. Okay. So let's start with the first rule. No adding other people in chat. And what I mean by that specifically is other panel hosts. So if you want to debate somebody on a point, you can't just put at Polarsworld, your point was dumb, go back to high school and learn some more, right? You can't do that. I'm sorry. You're not allowed to do that. But you can respond to chatters who ask you a question. You are allowed to do that while you're waiting for the next turn to speak. Number two, let's say there's a situation where you feel like you want to get involved, but everybody's talking, you can't get in there. Raise your hand. I will write your name down, and at some point, I will make sure the conversation gets to you eventually. I will try my damnedest to do so. Third rule, there will be, on every topic, there will be an intro period and an outro period. And this is a period where everybody gets at least 1 minute to say their statement on what they think about a topic at the beginning and at the end of it, where nobody can interrupt you, and if somebody does interrupt you, they get muted or penalized. And I'm very, very heavy about this rule because I want to make sure everybody at least has a minimum amount of time to respond and talk if they're not very good at jumping into conversation. Last rule, this is a lot of people on this panel, so there's going to be a lot of times where you want to talk, but somebody else wants to talk at the same time. I'm going to ask everybody to be as polite as possible when it comes to letting other people talk and giving people who haven't had chances to talk to step forward and talk. I'm only one man, so I can only do so much. Thankfully, I have a co-moderator who's going to help me out. And I'm going to ask you to that if I speak up and I start talking because I'm trying to say, hey, don't interrupt this person as much as you're doing. Interruptions are allowed, but you got to keep them kind of moderated to, like, you have to interrupt because you feel like you just have to. But if you interrupt too much, I will jump in and I will say, hey, we got to let this person talk. And anytime I'm talking, everybody shuts up, because the only reason I'm going to get involved is to ask either a clarifying question, number one, or number two, to help somebody speak up who hasn't had an opportunity to speak up. Okay, these are all the rules. If there's any things you need to get clarified, I just DM me and I will answer any questions you got. If there is a question right now about moderation, though, you're free to ask.
Real quick, just want to say Brenton is back. So yeah.
Wonderful.
It should work.
Oh, one last thing. Nothing TOS, right? There are certain things that are TOS and Twitch does not allow. If you do that on my platform, of course, that can get me banned from the platform. So anything TOS, you'll instantly get kicked from the show. Okay, that's all the rules. We're going to go straight into the first topic. And this will be intro period, so no interrupting anybody else, as this topic is talked about for intros. Number one. Does the media have a left-wing bias? And are Trump's attacks on it fair? I'll repeat it one more time for the people in the back. Does the media have a left-wing bias? And are Trump's attacks on it fair? I'm going to start, as always, in the left-hand corner with, hey, it's Vadim. You have 1 minute.
Okay, I'm just going to briefly say that I think that the media is. I had so much planned, and I realize I can say a small amount in a small time. That the media is not actually as left-wing as people think. I'm going to elaborate on that later. I'm just going to go to the Trump question. 95% more of the time, 95% or more of the time, are the attacks on him fair? Absolutely. Or rather, are his attacks fair? No, absolutely not. We're talking about a president who has the uncanny knack to literally lie 3 or 4 times in a sentence. This man's lies are legendary. Everything from busloads of illegals or committing voter fraud to windmills cause cancer. I could go on and on. There's way crazier stuff than that. So of course the media is going to call him out on these things. He's very much an enemy of the free press. He's made numerous incendiary comments about it. I'm no big fan of mainstream or mainstream media, but he's said that the rights. I'm sorry, I'm losing. See, I have notes here. He's talked about opening up libel laws. He has tried to have his former chief of staff look into how they could do that. He's tried to also sue Bill Maher over orangutan jokes. So the reason why I point that out is because it's the reason why he wants to open libel laws is to create frivolous lawsuits. He's blacklisted plenty of reporters and entire outlets from events. He demands reporters to be fired simply for, or he has demanded that a reporter get fired simply for tweeting an inaccurate number of attendees at his rallies. I'll just end by saying, he's the alternative facts president. It's dangerous. It's the reason why batshit QAnon conspiracy doofuses continue to take hold within the conservative party. And, his whole tactic with attacking the media is just to obfuscate the truth, to take pressure and just worthwhile criticism off of him. He's the fake news president, and it's done tremendous damage.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to SuspectSushi.
I didn't expect to be called so quickly. All right, hold on. Let me just fix my camera here. Dylan, I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. All right, anyway, so about how the media has an obvious leftist bias towards Donald J. Trump, okay? The fact of the matter is, like, over 95% of all stories created by Donald Trump, definitely fake news. Donald Trump is the great savior of the nation. Okay, Biden is going to destroy and burn down this nation 1,000%. And is his attacks on the media absolutely wholeheartedly warranted? I agree with that 100%. The news media are a enemy of the people, and Donald Trump is representing us and trying to fight for our rights and liberties. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Okay, and next I'm going to throw it over to TheTerk.
Yeah, so the media is a really large group. I think all media are kind of leaning one way or the other. You know, Republicans are guilty of it, just as the far left. I've got a lot of data that suggests that, yes, there is a definite left-leaning bias, and it's not good data, so y'all don't want to hear it. But I just think that Trump's reaction towards it, I think, is not in good taste. You know, if you're a modest person, you'd think his stuff he says is pretty bad. But it is effective. It's bringing awareness to his cause, and it's really opening up the eyes of a lot of people that would sometimes just glaze past what mainstream media does.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Pisco.
Sure, thank you. On the first sub-question, I think it's important to set aside like some threshold questions. One is, what is the media? I sort of consider the media to be a they, not an it. It's hard to speak about the media as though it has one conscious impulse. When it's numerous individuals and numerous reporters and numerous positions. So I would like to hear more clarity on the part of people who are accusing the media of having a liberal bias of what they consider the media to be. Next threshold question is, what is a left-wing bias? If that means a bias in favor of left-wingers and of like socialists and communists, I think it couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I think you'll find a lot of common ground with socialists and leftists who say, the media hates Bernie Sanders and they're not going to platform our people. So I think you should be clear about the kind of left-wing bias that you're alleging. In general, I think the bias probably is more towards sensationalism and profits than it is necessarily any given political ideology. Next, I want to posit the fact, maybe it'll be controversial, that it's not hard to seem that you have a Democrat bias in this country when so much ridiculous shit is coming out of this administration. I think HeyIt'sVadim talked about that a little bit with respect to things that are directly on point on free speech. See, for instance, libel laws. See, for instance, what he has to say about any given substantive topic, whether it be immigration or the nature of our democracy. These are, I think, largely unpopular, not mainstream opinions that we might not peacefully hand over power. So things like that, it's hard to appear to have a sort of straight and narrow approach. I also want to attack the notion that there could ever be a media free from bias. What does that even look like? Just the framing of certain stories, the selection of some stories over others, is in some sense an editorial decision. So I reject the notion that there's some objective sort of point to reach in which all our media will be unbiased. And on the merits of the actual question, I think Fox News, Sinclair Broadcasters, among others, these are mainstream media sources, and they're largely Republican. So I question. I think the burden of proof is on people alleging a bias to prove it. And of course, I think not much more has to be said about Trump's attack on the media. They're dangerous, and I think fairly unsubstantiated. Thank you.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Dronetek Politics.
Okay, can you guys hear me? So there's a lot of smart people here. You guys are intimidating, but I'll do my best here, especially since I'm the media guy. There's a lot to respond to here too. I definitely think I agree with a lot of you that say that it's kind of hard to quantify what the media is. When I talk about it, I'm talking about network and cable news media, and Hollywood too, to some extent. But I mean, that definitely leans Democrat bias. I don't know about left wing. I think that the media uses the left, the far left, the communists, the socialists, and all these guys, especially more recently with, Antifa, and these are a whole separate debates, but BLM and all this, running cover for them as I see it, and holding them to standards that they don't hold the other side to. And there's a long history of this, long pattern of it going back to really the Clinton years. I think, you can go back to George W. Bush the first and kind of track it, but there's a definite bias there. There's tons of studies, lots of data. As far as, I just kind of want to address a couple of things here. How much time do I have?
You've got I let people go over a little bit. I'll give you like a minute 30.
Okay, so the claim that it's for profits, you know, I don't necessarily buy that because, and you're right that there's definitely right-leaning Republican media out there, more of it now than there has been in the past, as far as like OAN and stuff, which I don't really watch any of it, but those are the ones that are doing really well. If these other ones wanted to really compete with Fox, they would just take on the mantra. But I agree that both sides are doing it. As far as rationalizing media bias, saying, oh, it's because Trump's so crazy. Well, you know, Trump's kind of a result of this stuff building up over a long time. And so, you know, the media, now all you're doing is going, oh, well.
Dronetek, you're having audio problems. You're really breaking up.
It's being attacked by drones.
Second. That's it.
It's the media.
Yeah. One drone. I'll go to somebody else and then come back to you. Is that okay? Okay. Brenton, come to me now. Don't break up.
Yeah, so I don't know how much you guys heard before, but I'm a former activist with Occupy Wall Street, and I can tell you beyond the shadow of a doubt that the media does not have a leftist bias. In fact, before Mayor Bloomberg sent his stormtroopers in to clear Zuccotti Park and sent out like freaking police helicopters in the air to prevent coverage from the air, he reached out to the head of the New York Times, the liberal New York Times, and got the assurance that they would take his side in this before he acted. That is on record. Similarly, we can only see the media's response to Bernie Sanders. Over and over again, the media, they appeal to certain audiences and demographics, and they serve capitalist profits. So what you have essentially is you have a very large right-wing media, which came out recently just during the Bush years with Fox News, Breitbart, OAN has been mentioned. You also have more traditional media that kind of leans establishment liberal, but they tend to be very buttoned down. They hate, for instance, Antifa for the most part. And if you go and you look at articles about Antifa, there's a great a great video by Cody Johnston on how to actually cover stories about Antifa, and you will see the anti-Antifa bias and the pro-fascist bias even in the so-called liberal media. So I would say overall, you know, when you've got Chris Hayes freaking out and thinking that there's going to be French Revolution socialist style executions in Central Park if freaking Bernie Sanders wins the president, Bernie Sanders, who would be a centrist in any other country in Europe, suddenly he's going to bring the revolution. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's a lie that the conservatives constantly put out because people in this position, especially if they're more fascist inclined in their thinking, tend to project. That is a documented part of fascist psychology. And a lot of these people are founded by oil billionaires. You've got stuff like PragerU. You've got stuff like Ben Shapiro. You've got classically Abby being forced on everyone on YouTube because of millions of dollars of oil money that have been pushed into that. So is the media left-wing? The only left-leaning sources that you can really find in the media is maybe The Intercept and maybe Democracy Now! That's about it. And both of those are pretty mild. And then, like, if we want to say, are Trump's attacks on the media fair? I mean, Trump is a monster, so I don't care if his attacks on the media are fair. I would say overall that he should be brought down by any means necessary. Let me preface that, by any means both just and necessary.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up and throw it over to Dronetek.
Right. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay now? I'll be
Sounds
quick.
like
So pretty much all the anchors in the mainstream media minus Fox are former Democrat politicians. You guys are right about the attacks on Bernie, but I mean, and it's funny when they were attacking Bernie for promoting Fidel Castro's literacy program, several people in the media had done that when Fidel Castro died. So there are lots of far left wingers in the media that don't necessarily, they attack Bernie Sanders because they don't see that as the quickest way to their political agenda. But I mean, that's definitely ultimately what they want. I mean, maybe Bernie's just not the candidate.
I got some bad news
You're
for you.
breaking
You're breaking up
again.
again. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, man. I'm gonna go to Polar. I'm gonna go to IPA, and we'll come back to you one more time. We'll see what happens. Okay. Okay. Throw it over to Polar.
I think when we talk about the media, it is really interesting to hear what people mean. Is it the fact that there are a lot of leftists or left-leaning people in media? Is it the stories that they put out? Is it the content that they create? I think that's a very interesting distinction, and we can go down that road and actually see what's going on, right? We have platforms and media platforms like radio, heavily conservative, YouTube, which is getting even more and more conservative, but we do have some left-leaning people on now, and even even generalized news. It's not as left as most people think, and I'd love to go into that. But I think what's really funny is that there's a lot of irony when it comes to Trump criticizing the media, right? Because a major right-wing critique of media, and this is a thing with all types of media, is that people will always be like, you should get your news from multiple places. You should do this, this, and this. But then when Trump criticizes the media, most people don't realize that indirectly, he's now the source of the majority of a lot of people's news. So what he says goes. And there's a lot of harm in that. We saw that in the past year with coronavirus. People are more and more skeptical of the news due to his attacks. And as a result, we have so much misinformation. People are... especially after I don't care. Especially after that inject bleach quote. Okay, that was really cringe. I have to be honest.
He didn't say that.
Well, inherently.
No interruption. No interruption is allowed.
But even if he did directly say that, that's really important. The effect that it had on the people is what matters. It's not the words that he individually says, but the effect that it has on the individuals and people in society. Some individuals called. For example, like chemical hotlines and reported that they had done this and were fearful. To say that Trump's attacks are, I guess would say, valid is only one aspect of it. The fact that his attacks have created a kind of center on him for news is really disgusting and is kind of authoritarian to a certain aspect.
I'm going to give it to IPA, and then I'm going to give Dronetek one more time afterwards to see if I can get him an intro statement. And then we're going to go straight into it. So, IPA, your turn.
All right. So even in my opening statement, I'm going to be the dirty centrist and attack both sides immediately. According to Pew Research, 73% of the population that they polled, which Pew Research is known for doing pretty unbiased research, says that they agree that the media should be acting as watchdogs. However, they did note how harshly that the people polled view how the media is portraying both the left and the right, depended greatly upon their news sources and their political leanings. And I have that study up, and we can certainly talk about it if people want to see that. But so just keep that in mind as we're having this discussion. Where people get their news from and what their political leanings are greatly going to shade this conversation, even according to their research. So, does the media have a bias? Yes, but I don't think it's specifically just the left side. It's absolutely both sides, like a couple of people have mentioned. But I expect that's going to happen when you have 8 companies that control all of the media in this entire country, right? In the 1950s, it was more like 50 companies. Okay, now it's 8. So yeah, I guess I'm not real shocked by that at all. So are Trump's attacks warranted on the media? On principle, yes. When you get things wrong and you mischaracterize the president, yes, absolutely, he has a right to respond to those things. Is he responding in even more absurd and outlandish things sometimes? Yes, he absolutely is. So,
okay, now I'm going to bring it back to Dronetek for one more shot at that intro statement.
One more shot. I apologize to everybody. I know everybody wants to get in here. I just want to say one more thing. As far as Trump's attacks on the media, I think that Trump takes it too far sometimes. I think outright saying enemy of the people, although I personally have thought that for a long time. I think that's, as a president, that he shouldn't do that. But our media is deeply corrupt. And I think Trump is right to call them out. And I think I've stopped, I watch it for my channel, but that's it. I used to hate watch it and enjoy it and to some degree. Fox News, I'd watch CNN, all of it. But it's poison, obviously. And so I think Trump's attacks are right. Do I think he goes about the right way? Not necessarily. But I mean, go back to Obama. Now, I don't want this isn't a whataboutism, but Obama kind of set the stage for attacking the media. The media was largely in the tank for him. I mean, I went through the Bush years, and they, especially after the Iraq War, they were very anti-Bush. And then literally the day that Obama was elected, they're very pro-Obama and spinning everything positively for Obama. And he went after Fox hard. He got Anita Dunn in there, and they had the war on Fox. And so, and there's a lot more involved in that. You all probably know about it. But so, that you guys love that guy. So, I mean, he started all this. And so that's pretty much it.
Obama.
Okay. So, I mean, we probably agree on more of this than you think, but I definitely think, and I'm looking forward to going around on this, but it's definitely got a Democrat Party bias. I mean, they are basically the Joe Biden campaign at this point, and that's my closing.
Okay, now it is free and open dialogue. You may engage freely. Just try to be productive.
What do you mean Obama started it all? What does that mean?
Well, he started making attacks on the media more like mainstream. There had been attacks on the media. There have been for a long time, but he brought Anita Dunn into the White House, and they literally called it the war on Fox News.
Okay, so
and she would go out regularly and say, "Oh, they're the arm of the Republican Party, and they're just lying, and they're propaganda."
They are.
I mean, they are the
okay, but the network she's on.
Okay,
but the network she's on is doing it for the Democrat Party.
They're not only an arm of the Republican Party, but they're basically like a propaganda machine for the Republican Party. So I just want to say just real quickly, if you could do me a solid, Dylan, and not come to me first for the questions, because I over-prepared my opening statements, and it'll take me a little while to kind of parse through my notes and whatnot.
No problem.
And formulate
No problem.
what I'm going to say. But I'll just hop in and say real quickly that I think that in a superficial sense, there are certain ways that the overwhelming majority of what people think of as the mainstream media is, in a superficial sense, left-wing. But I'd argue that it's far more centrist in many other ways than most conservatives admit or recognize. For instance, because they are desperate for conservative viewers, and this manifests itself in so many different ways. For instance, most of the time, if CNN or MSNBC is hosting a climate change discussion, they're going to have a climatologist up against some climate change denier who has no business being there, because they're just spewing absolute bullshit. Most of these people are also paid by special interests and whatnot. We could get into that, but those motherfuckers, they just have no decent reason to be there because they're peddling absolute BS. And there's other examples of that. The last thing I'll say, just because I want to hand it over to other people, is that, I mean, this has been going on for a very long time. We all remember what occurred during the Iraq War. Most people knew that, or at least most informed people knew, that the weapons of mass destruction thing was all a smokescreen, that it was largely bullshit. And there were some key people in the media who kind of spoke out about it. Some people lost their jobs because they spoke out too much about it, and they should have been kind of sounding the alarm bells on that war. And that just didn't happen. If the media was truly as left-wing as many people would like to say it is, there would have been so much more opposition to the war before it started, and that whole quagmire clusterfuck went into, went ahead.
I think Vadim. Oh, I'm hearing feedback from someone, but I think Vadim brings up a really good point when it comes to objectivity versus neutrality. I think a lot of people expect us to have this like whole idea of like both sides in the media, even when one side is completely wrong. That's not a good way to approach, I think, any form of like public interpretation of news, such as like, I don't want to necessarily see like a flat earther versus a round earther on TV and give credibility to both of them as if they're equal standings. That's a really important aspect.
Do you think Democrats are just naturally correct?
No. Well, it's hard to like top its
because
administration.
they're never. When is the media ever critical?
Wait. Black. That was a question directed specifically at Polar, so I want to give Polar an opportunity to respond.
Polar.
No, I don't necessarily think the Democrats are always right.
Can you give me an example recently of the media like being critical of a Democrat's policy or idea?
You want to give me one? I mean, what we already mentioned, the media is not a conglomerate. Would you like to? You said that you watch a lot of news. Would you like to give me one?
No, there is none. There's not a single example that I can think of.
Fox News is the media.
No, I don't watch Fox. I watch more. I don't watch Fox.
We already mentioned
look at my channel. I don't watch Fox.
Fox News is the media. They're heavily critical of Democrats.
Right. I am totally. I'm not arguing about Fox. They're just as corrupt. I'm not. That's not my argument.
I think I can answer your question, Dronetek. I mean, if you're
very specific question though, very specific.
Well,
name one single policy or scandal or anything that the media was critical of Democrats on.
The media was extremely critical of a whole number of policies that Bernie Sanders put forward, far more than anyone. AOC as well.
The media loves AOC.
What about Bill Clinton?
No. They love talking about AOC. They love kind of like making her part of the conversation. They don't.
But no one's going against AOC and her policies. No, Democrats are going against it.
Are you out of your mind?
No, there are a lot of
So
Democrats.
what media
No,
outlets
Just
are
fight off
against
a
the Green New
Democratic
Deal?
challenger.
Hey, you know what I like? I
What
like
media
when,
outlet is
Hey,
against
wait,
the Green New Deal?
one at a time.
I was a really big fan of basically, you know how you say like, oh, Donald Trump, you know, he hates the media and he always says everything's fake news or they're out to get him. But I like how no one said a thing when Pelosi said she was set up and it was fake news against her when she went into the hair salon.
Yeah.
And but like no one condemned that verbiage whatsoever except for like Fox
You
News.
don't even know
and
what
that
he's
was
talking
essentially
about.
it.
Isn't that a condemn that is what
What
you're
about
doing?
here's another instance? No. Here's another instance. How about when The Hill put out a false story, an outright false, salacious story, where they said Donald Trump's rally, and like I think it was in South Carolina, where nobody was wearing masks, but every single picture took and videos showed that well over 80% of the people there were taking masks. Like they constantly lie. They take pictures and set certain angles and make it look worse on Donald Trump and things of this nature, and it's happening all the time. But no, you're not going to admit that. What about the fact
For
that
everybody,
like,
they did
when
that for
Hillary Clinton was
Occupy
running
Wall
in
Street, too.
2016, they would literally have gyms at like 10% capacity, and they would crowd everybody to the front, get high angles to make it look like it's packed. Constant media bias.
It's not a they.
Yeah, but they
Second of
did
all,
the
you
same
put
thing to Occupy Wall
stories
Street to try to make us look like we didn't have as many people as we did, to try to make us look stupid, to try to make us look wrong. You would see constantly, I would see like reporters from mainstream media sites, even stuff that's like very perceived as very far left-leaning, would come to the park and ignore anyone who could say anything reasonable and go straight to the crazy people every single time because they were interested in slandering us. Similarly, with the Occupy Wall Street trial of Cecily McMillan, the only Occupy protester to actually be convicted. I was working on the media team for that thing. What I watched happen was we worked really hard to try to get the Daily Show to cover it, the left-leaning Daily Show. We sent, we reached out to them again and again and again. Finally, they agreed, we're going to cover it. We're going to do some jokes on this story. Now, this is a girl facing 7 years in prison for elbowing a cop with a history of violence in the eye after he grabbed her breast from behind. Didn't even know he was a cop. You know what happened? Oh, the Daily Show covered it. But what they did was they instantly just took the police's side. They said, oh, assaulting a police officer. Yeah, you can't do that. That was Jon Stewart's joke. And he nearly got Cecily put in prison for 7 years for a wayward elbow. It's the most ridiculous thing. These people definitely do have a bias towards making their editors happy and towards playing to their particular audience and for kissing up to the powerful and the elite. But that is not the same thing as having a left-wing bias, particularly because the powerful and the elite are not left-wing in any way, shape, or form, since the left looks to destroy the powerful and the elite. All you guys really got to do is watch Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent, and we see how the entire media got behind the Iraq War. And similarly, if you look at the coverage of Occupy Wall Street, you'll see the entire media, for the most part, getting behind destroying and defaming Occupy Wall Street. And we see it again now with Antifa.
I think we really got to talk about what the left is. I understand what you're saying, Brenton, and you're saying that the left, when you're saying the left, at least correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about like progressive left, not like the establishment left. But in a lot of people's eyes, we still see that as the left, even though you're fighting against that. And I get
you
that.
may be able to see it, but that's a sign of the depravity of American culture. Like what's happened is...
so you believe just like Noam Chomsky, where he says America's the great Satan? You believe that?
Noam Chomsky doesn't say America.
No, he actually quite literally said that.
But anyways, no, I don't think America is the great Satan.
He refers to America as the great Satan.
Why are you going there?
I mean, he may have said that, but that's like he's probably quoting somebody when he says that.
No, he said it.
So anyway, I don't want to argue about Chomsky in particular because that's an ad hominem argument and it's stupid and you shouldn't have brought it up.
No. You brought up you just said America was bad, and then you also
I did not say America is bad.
Look, he quoted Chomsky's idea. He quoted Chomsky's idea, and then you attacked Chomsky on some other unrelated ground.
No. He went directly into a line of attacking America, and I said, "Oh, so you agree with Noam Chomsky saying that America is a great Satan?"
Okay.
But you don't need to cover for him. Okay.
I mean, Suspect. Sorry.
For anything,
Suspect.
I cited a documentary.
Suspect. I don't know why I went after Polar for that one. Stop talking, Polar. Suspect. Okay. So your problem with let me just skip down here with this person you're engaging with right now. Could you be more clear so he can respond clearly? I'm kind of confused a little bit.
Who are you talking to?
Sushi accused Chomsky of being anti-American, and she's conflating that, I think, with a position that was cited by Brenton, talking about the media and how they convinced people in the right-wing direction. And Sushi, to sort of put down Brenton, is saying for unrelated purposes, you shouldn't listen to Chomsky. Although I don't agree with Brenton's notion that America is like disturbed. I think that the right-wingers on this panel are wrong about the Democrat bias too, not just the leftist bias.
By the way, I'm just talking about the fact that American perceptions of politics is out of step with the rest of the world. The Overton window has been pulled very far to the right in our country, and it happened because of the destruction of the left during the McCarthyist era due to Cold War era politics. So what happened was that the anarchist movement and the socialist movement and the communist movement were suppressed and destroyed in their entirety, and people's lives were ruined as a result of this. And what happened was that led to things being unbalanced, where we have the far right in America, which is currently in power. Then we have the centrists, and then we have the Democrats, which are essentially, I would say they're slightly more socially progressive, but as far as economics go, they're basically 90s era Republicans. So when I talked about how disturbed American culture is, I just mean that the Overton window is too far in one direction and that you're not seeing the whole picture. So I would consider the left to be anything that challenges the current economic status quo. So I would say Sochdem, like Bernie Sanders, that's about the furthest right-wing center of the left.
Yeah, that's not what they're talking
Marxists
about.
and you have anarchists.
They're talking about left-wing, and they're including Democrats. So you have to talk to each other. And
Yeah,
if you're
Democrats are
Right, that's what I was trying to clarify. That's what I was trying to clarify.
Absolutely right. If you're only talking about our definition of leftism or what that is, then we're not talking to each other. So we need to, I think, be capacious enough to include their definition of left-wing, which I reject that the Democrats are sort of favored in the media.
I want to throw it over to Vadim.
I mean, Democrats are favored by some media, but Republicans
give me
are.
a second. Drone, you cut out. Drone, I got some bad news for you. Your mic's messing up again. And I got to throw it over to Vadim, who was raising his hand for a
I would
while.
like to actually speak, but I'm just going to, just because I think it's fair. I saw that TheTerk, he hasn't chimed in that much. He did have his hand up, so I'd like to throw it over to him, and then if that's cool, then I'll chime in with what I had to say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Turk was also on the list. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go after you since whatever. But I posted a picture to the Discord with a good chart that has a lot of known media outlets, and I want to hear the panel's opinion on how these outlets are categorized, because from what I'm seeing, it's showing that both liberal, left-leaning outlets are in fact left-leaning, and right-leaning outlets are right-leaning. I want to hear people's opinions throughout
data.
this.
How is this data?
So I can give you guys the link to that chart as well, and you can go and read all the data and stuff. But this is, it's not a biased source from my understanding.
But my understanding,
One way or another, I don't think
I'll
it's
take a
even
look
relevant.
at that. But okay, is now the time where I
Yeah, go
chime
ahead.
in? Okay, cool. So I just want to throw out there real quickly that I really do think that we need to broaden the circle here, because tons of people these days are consuming their media through things like YouTube and online publications. These are not small sources. Sometimes they get far more views than like cable companies who have primetime broadcasts. So, I mean, there's no shortage of popular right-wing outlets. The Daily Wire, I believe, is the largest, or rather the most read right-wing publication, or really news publication, period, on Facebook. There's The Blaze. Brenton was talking about the, channels like PragerU, Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro. I name all three of those in a row because these are all people who receive funding from everyone from the Koch brothers to highly evangelical fracking billionaires. So when viewed in totality, I don't think that the media skews very far left at all, because all of those things have to be kind of held into account. And all of those sources that I mentioned are just, they're very influential on politics today.
Yeah, Tim Pool just passed 1 million subscribers. That's way more, or at least as much.
He's relatively
as,
new also,
people
but
watch CNN.
Polar, I think.
Yeah, and y'all view Tim Pool as a right?
Oh, Tim Pool is definitely. I know Tim Pool.
Yeah,
Tim Pool is
right.
way on the right.
Right.
Yeah, he's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to add on.
left.
Yeah, he's just a grifter, honestly.
No, come on.
He wasn't
no,
always
he's not
like
a
that.
grifter.
Wait. This is separate, but I have another point to address. I think it's really funny that we just established that like the media isn't a conglomerate, but we hear the same talking points that Trump uses about the media this, the media that, right after we've established that it's a diverse platform with multiple people, and we have people like Dronetek and Sushi who are like, well, the media, they do this and they do that.
Polar, I got to address that. I don't know that we can't call. Well, okay, so yes, you're right. We have a lot of these independent sources, especially with the rise of internet media. Things like Twitch and things like YouTube, and where people have their own independent platforms within another platform, right? But if you look at the media as a whole, if you're talking about traditional media sources, newspapers, TV stations, holy shit, those are giant conglomerates. They're all owned by like six companies.
I can address this point as well. One, when we think about like media sources, we all know Fox News has the most viewers, not just in news, but in cable in general. That's one aspect. And I also have a really interesting study that
that Fox is now owned by Disney, right?
Fox is Fox. I don't know what to tell you. You think they're any less conservative?
This ties in because one, we all realize news is a corporation. They go where profit is to be made. And since there's a market for right-wing news on national TV, there's gonna be one. One, two,
one?
TERK,
just one.
Two? I said one. That was the point.
That was point one.
Yeah, it was point one. I'm going to point two.
Yeah, but there is only one or two though. But yeah.
Well, they are the largest. What, like 2.57 million? That's massive. With like the other like news media like coming like trailing behind, right? The Turk brought up an interesting aspect about like the media companies or the outlets on like a platform on like this kind of like distribution, right? But even if there was a liberal bias, it doesn't actually affect which stories are covered, right? There was a really interesting study.
Wait, it actually dictates how they're
No,
covered.
let him answer.
He's
teeing it up for me.
I'll give you a great example.
No.
Okay, wait.
Guys,
Okay, I'm talking, so everybody gets quiet. I want them to finish the statement, and then after I want this to bring to Drone, because Drone hasn't been able to talk to the technical issues for a little bit.
Let Turk go. He's been dying.
Polar's addressing me real quick, and he's teeing it up for a home run here.
Okay, Polar, would you like to finish?
So there was a really interesting study that looked at the individual journalists at these media outlets, right? So even if they were liberal, they did a blind study and submitted over 400 news articles, right? And they all looked at the fact that even though they were liberal, conservative, or with other independently defined political affiliation, they still reported about the same news, like the same types of news. I think that easily demonstrates that even though there may be like this kind of distribution onto where they may be generally, it's not affecting which stories that they covered. And one really important aspect of this as well is this study didn't just include national networks, but local news and state news. That's really important, and we do not take that into effect when we think about national news networks, because a lot of people get their news from like local or like radio news, for example.
So can I respond?
Sure.
So that study is from Science Mag. I actually posted it in the Discord as well. And yes, what they determined was what you said is in fact. But did you actually read the article and how they performed the study?
Yeah, I looked at the methodology. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you know that the response rate for this was very, very, very low, especially statistically speaking, for a study of this scale, right? And the questions they were asking were basically, we're going to come up with this not make believe, but like a pretend person that's running for a Senate seat, governor, whatever. And they intentionally asked these people to respond back. And they said, yeah, I'll cover it. And it's like, that's not like the news that we're talking about here. That's like, yeah, we'll go and report the news. What we're talking about is the bigger picture. And this goes into what Brenton was saying. People want to be selling the views for money and everything. This is not an interesting story. No one cares what like some potential person's going to be running for.
But that kind of demonstrates whether it's actually left or right? Specific.
And if you even go and look at the data itself, I can actually show you the chart. It's figure 4 here. If you actually, it's not figure 4. Whatever. We can talk about it in the DM. But basically, if you look at it, there is actually slight skews that conservatives will report more on conservative stuff, and both sides of the progressive liberalism will report more on liberal people that are going.
Yeah. What was the percentage on that, though?
Quick question for the Turk.
It's not a percentage thing. It's a trend thing, and that's this entire conversation. Is there a bias in the media? Yes.
So
it's not just the story. It's not just the story, but the spin on that story or the way it's covered. Like a great example of this. And it's not that I want to get into like race and police and stuff, but this is a good example. The media does not report on Breonna Taylor's a great example. So that happens. But there was another big story in Houston where 2 white people were shot and killed by and a no-knock raid that 2 black cops lied to get. So it was an unlawful warrant, and yet you don't hear about that. Now, I'm not getting into a whole race argument, but my point is, hold on.
Finish. We gotta let him finish, and then you can.
My point is that there is definitely a bias bent in what stories they'll cover to advance a narrative. If they reported both stories, that narrative that they're going with right now might start to crumble. Now that there's more context injected, so they will ignore stories purposely, or if they do cover it, they won't cover it in the same racially kind of hysterical lens that they would otherwise. And that's just an example.
I need to weigh in on this really quickly.
Excuse me. No.
Throw it over to Pisco. I'll throw it to you after.
One is I reject your notion that you have the opinion or the perfect analysis of when something is covered in a hysterical way. I reject that you have the credentials to assign for me or to assign for the people what's hysterical and what's not. Second of all, people cared more about the Breonna Taylor story. If you have a problem with more people covering the Breonna Taylor story, you have a problem with people caring more about that story. So I think that the sort of starting factor is what people care about, and the media will tailor to that. And if people don't care much about your story, they're not going to cover it.
So
right, if they don't care about it for political reasons, they won't cover it. Yeah, duh.
The issue with, I've heard this question a lot. Why doesn't because the cops do kill a ton of white people. So why does the media not cover white people in the way that they cover the murder of black people? It is because there is not a racialized element to the killing of white people by police. And if they
you're
were
just
to go
assuming
after,
it's a racial element. You're
I'm saying there's not a racial element.
Oh my God.
I'm saying, and if they were to work in what they would have to do.
You're just rationalizing it.
No, I'm not rationalizing it. If they would have to cover the police murders of white people in the way they cover police murders of black people, would have to lead to a criticism of the police overall as an institution.
Which might actually
want to do that
something.
because they're liberals and they like the police.
No.
I hate the police.
Okay.
What I'm gonna do here?
I want to make suspect. I want to make sure that we do remember that this was about media bias, and I want to make, while you're talking about this in the aspect of media bias, make sure it stays in that aspect, and we don't get off into a debate specifically about police because nobody here studied for that.
Sure, but this relates directly to media bias. The fact is that they're not biased. It's not like they're trying to hide the murders of white people.
They absolutely are. Let me tell you. So CBS was tweeting out the other day. CBS and ABC and NBC was tweeting out, and I'll let you go, Turk. They were tweeting out 139 black people killed this year so far, and they had a wall of names. Nobody. Okay, why were they killed? We don't know. There's all these details that are left out on purpose because it's part of a narrative, right?
It can't be comprehensive. They can't just list everything. There's an information.
Are you kidding me? Why would you put that out? That is insightful. You have no idea why those people are.
Can you link to that? Can you link to that, please?
I will.
I would
I'll
like
get
to
it.
see it.
I'll get it.
I know you said you're going to throw it to Turk, but IPA hasn't talked in a while, so I want to throw the IPA, Vadim, and then Turk, if that's okay.
As much as I would like to attack the racial notion there, I'm going to respect what Dylan wanted to do and not go there. I feel like, Dronetek, you're taking this in a really way more nefarious way than I think it needs to be looked at. I feel like there's an obvious motivator here, and it's not racial undertones. It's not, what we're trying to push as a narrative.
I'm saying for a political agenda,
it's
not
money.
Racial,
it's what's getting attention. It's what's getting people to watch. It's money.
Right, I agree. I'm not saying it's racial necessarily. I'm saying they're using race for a political agenda, and that's why they ignore these stories.
What's their political end? What's their political end?
Well, ultimately, above all, it's to get Democrats in power. So this helps that along. Because that's what Democrats are out there. It's all to bolster what the Democrats are out there saying. So it's a storyline. It's a storyline.
The media is like a wholesale arm of the Democratic Party, correct?
Not wholesale, but largely, yeah. I mean, look at ABC News. George Stephanopoulos, former Clinton official. You got at ABC, what's his face? That was also part of the Obama administration. All these anchors are former Democrats, working.
So the fact that they're former Democrats means that they're affiliated in a way that it's an agent relationship. And the media's taking their marching orders from DNC. Is that your?
I'm watching it. I'm sitting there watching
No,
it
they're
with my
taking
own
their
eyes.
marching orders from the companies above ABC.
Sorry,
So ABC again, go back to what I said in chat. Disney, right? Like it's Disney, Viacom. Let me go back to my thing here. Hang on a second. Give me 2 seconds.
Sure.
A quick question for the Turk.
Sorry.
But it's like 6 companies, one of which being Disney that owns ABC, which owns so yes, they're it's coming downhill, right? And ultimately, what it is that there's a lot of money involved in that, right? And so yes, they're being told from on high to do these things.
I want to throw it over to Vadim, then the Turk, and then Sus, because I saw Sus raise his name too.
Okay, I'd like to speak a little more to Donald Trump and the media. I think that he is actually just a threat to freedom of the press in general. I think I absolutely do, and I'll name some facts that I think establish that. One, he said it was to Justin Trudeau. He said it was frankly disgusting the way that the press is able to write whatever they want to write. He threatened to cancel the broadcast licenses of media companies that offer negative coverage of him. He had the White House press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, call ESPN to fire Jameel Hill for criticizing him. He asked Comey, who was at the time the FBI director, to jail reporters who published classified information, or he asked if that was possible. I guess that's more like in line with what it was. He threatened to pull the credentials of reporters, who write negative stories about him, while admitting he considers negative media coverage to be fake. I could go on here. I have a long, extensive list. And he said 91% of the network news about me is fake. It's just this man is in stark opposition to the very spirit of both, I think, free speech. There's other arguments that I can make to that individually, and more importantly, just the freedom of press. But I name both of those things at the same time because they're just kind of inextricably linked. But anyway, that's
you just listed something in the Discord. Can you tell me what this story proves?
Well, what it proves is that the media is not interested in details. They want people thinking that black people are being hunted down by police, just shot.
Black people are being
willy-nilly, just shot.
They're not, though.
They're just shot.
They're not.
Like
they're really.
They are being hunted down by police.
No,
they're not.
They're really not.
What? You don't know why these? Look.
Yes, I do. Look, dude,
you don't know why
the Trump Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department admitted that in Ferguson, the Ferguson Police Department, which was started as a slave catching organization, used dogs strictly to torture and intimidate only black suspects.
Provide that source with the exact words.
I would like
provide that source with the exact words you just said.
Provide that source with the exact words. Look up
you claim the statement. You provide the source.
Okay.
I'll find it for you.
Let's go.
Okay.
So I just want to tell you that
CBS
story. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I'm just going back. I just want to get back to the list while he tries to get the source to provide it for the Turk. Turk was actually on the list, and then it was Sus. Turk, do you want to go, or should I throw this Sus first?
Yeah, I can go.
Okay, cool.
So, question for the panel. The whole Breonna Taylor thing was a complete tragedy. I think everybody agrees with that. But what was the type of warrant that was served the night that it happened? I want everyone to respond to this because this goes to the topic tonight.
I think it was served as a knock warrant after, right? The allegation. There are disputes about the facts. Is the answer to your question.
There's no dispute about the facts.
There is a dispute about the facts of how it was executed, right? So the judge.
Did you watch the attorney general?
Yes, I did.
And he said it was a no-knock warrant.
Correct.
There is no refuting that. It is a fact.
So there's refuting how it was executed, right? So there's dispute about the facts on whether they knocked, right? I'm not saying one way or the other, but to answer your question, there's a question.
It wasn't racial. It wasn't racial, but the media is making people think it's racial.
I don't want to get into that, to the stories of the sort of the instances of those stories.
But that goes towards this entire discussion. You're not getting fed facts the right way, and that is framing how people are understanding and interpreting information. There's media outlets. Fox News does it wrong. CNN does it wrong. They are not perpetrating the facts the way they are. That is bias.
If you go to the New York Times, they will say things like undisputed that the first shot was by the boyfriend. They give the facts as understood by the special prosecutor and the AG. I think the tail that's wagging the whole dog is public perception. The public thinks that there's
the media is giving the public the perception.
I don't think it's that way. I think that there's a perception.
I can guarantee the public did not watch the Attorney General's remarks about the case.
They did. They did. Of course they did.
No, they didn't.
Of course they did.
Pisco, let's talk about Kyle. Let's just briefly pivot to Kyle Rittenhouse, right? Because you and I and a couple other people were on your stream reading the actual charges, right? And we kind of analyzed it, right? How many people do you think are actually honestly out there doing that? Like, really? Probably not that many people.
Not a lot. Like, we're of course not a lot. What's the point? Like, the people aren't going to read huge.
A very small minority of people are going to actually be that well informed.
We read the motion to dismiss sentence, like the memorandum that was issued by the defense lawyers. No one's doing that unless you're a sort of a weirdo like we are. So I have to say,
I'm a murderer.
Oh, I understand that. No, first of all, no, that's not the case. People are criticizing aspects of that that incident on both sides. There are people saying this was valid self-defense on the media who have read.
Like, I didn't mean to bring up Rittenhouse because I want to talk about the issue, but my point was there are a very small number of people in this world that are going to intentionally be as informed as someone like yourself, right? That are going to sit down for 3 hours and analyze what that actually said. So yes, a lot of us just get our media from, hey, I saw this headline on the news, or they talked about it for 3 minutes on my local news.
That's a perfect point, and it goes to Drone's point about why aren't they showing more stuff. The fact is, there's a bandwidth problem here. They can't show everything. They have to cut stuff because people aren't going to read everything.
Hearing excuses and rationalizations, just like
it's not rationalization.
The whole objectivity versus you said objectivity versus neutrality, right? I mean, and I'm hearing this a lot from these people in the media, and it's these super biased people who are. And look, guys, I'm all for media that's tough on politicians, including Trump, but they specifically they lie by omission constantly. They omit tons of data. They omit stories of unarmed white people being shot by cops, and they do that because it would make the whole current narrative crumble. These people protesting would look like, I mean, I'm sorry, it's a conspiracy theory. I mean, the whole hands up, don't shoot. That was a conspiracy theory. That's still leading to like death and destruction today. And that was popularized.
I don't want to get into merits.
How is that a conspiracy theory?
It didn't happen.
I don't want to get into
what didn't happen.
Yeah.
The hands up, don't shoot started from Michael Brown, and it didn't happen.
Correct.
It did not happen.
Okay, I don't want to get into merits.
No. Before you pivot away from it, no, Pisco. Before you pivot away from it, what he is quite literally saying is the hands up, don't shoot narrative of Michael Brown was falsely reported on and massively spread. And when it finally came out with the truth of the matter that happened, they barely, and usually it's during non-peak hours, like offered any type of recanting of their previous news statement. This happens all the time.
So one is
refers strictly to Michael Brown. Hands up, don't shoot was something that was popularized because oftentimes unarmed
literally stemmed from the Michael Brown. It literally stemmed from the Michael Brown protest.
The slogan
literally
Black Lives Matter as a result of Michael Brown, but it was not just simply about Michael Brown. And there is plenty of data.
Started at the exact time.
I want to hear Brenton finish his point.
Yeah, there's plenty of data, and I actually have it right here because I was prepared for a debate on BLM that proves conclusively that cops shoot unarmed black men more often than they shoot unarmed white men.
Proportionally, you mean?
Get on the merits.
Statistics actually says you're lying about that per capita. It's not.
Don't get in the merits. It's not what the conversation's about.
Hang on, let me find this.
Okay, so
dude, you're supposed to be finding the Ferguson
I'm
thing
about to. Okay.
I'm
ending it there. Next person to talk.
You want me to read off the Ferguson thing directly on here because I sent it.
Okay, Brent has been muted. I said if next person to talk is muted, he got muted. Look, okay, I'm forcefully dragging it back to the media. Okay, I understand that this is a topic that should probably be discussed. I specifically chose not to choose these as one of the topics due to the fact that I want to make sure people had plenty of time to research, and I wanted to have specific guests on to talk about that topic. Maybe some of you can come on in the future to talk specifically about Black Lives Matter, and I understand how it is also related to the topic, but I think we're getting way too in the weeds on the specific point when it's specifically about this. In the future, if you want to come on here to talk about this in the future, send me a DM. I will do my best to have anybody who's on here right now to be on that future show. I've done a Black Lives Matter panel that was 100% about Black Lives Matter before. I'm willing to do it again due to recent events. I just want to make sure that we get back on topic since we don't have a lot of time left on this, so we can finish this. So I'm going to throw it first to Vadim, and then I'm going to... after that, I hope we can get to Polar.
I never got my
I will say, Suspect, you did get to talk a lot in these engagements. I will.
Well, like when they say outright salacious lies, I had to respond.
Suspect. It will get back to you. I promise. Okay. If not here, you will get an ending statement, just like everybody else. Okay. So I'm gonna throw it to Vadim. I'm gonna throw it to Polar, and then I'll throw it to Sus.
Sure. I'd like to throw out a question to, I mean, I guess everybody, but I'm really interested to see what the conservative folks on the panel have to say about this. I'm wondering if you will at least concede that there are some very dangerous issues that Trump has popularized that have, he's helped take root more in society. But I'll just name two right off the top of my head. Global warming is a Chinese hoax. I mean, that's not the only thing that he's said about it, but he's very dismissive of global warming in general. It's an existential crisis to the planet. And I think that kind of president saying things of that sort is really horrible. Coronavirus, he spread, way too many just bullshit things about coronavirus to even for me to even launch into listing them. So my question to you, it doesn't have to be those if you don't think those two apply, but is there any topic that you feel that he has been really dishonest with the American public and the media in general?
An open question of right-wingers, or what was... Yeah,
I mean, everyone can chime in, but I would like to hear what the right-wingers especially have to say about this.
I mean, he's so often misquoted. I'm just fact-checking the Chinese hoax. Or did he say global warming was a hoax? He said it was a Chinese hoax. I just wanted to see...
He said it's a Chinese hoax. Also, coincidentally, the Chinese used to say that the West was responsible for it way back in the day. But anyhow... from a Dylan Burns video, as a matter of fact.
I'd say there was a lot of misinformation about COVID early on. I mean, worldwide. I mean, in our country. Hey, I see you rolling your eyes, but I mean, the facts are the facts. I mean, January, he shut down travel early January.
Okay, we're just talking about...
remember when Nancy Pelosi went down Chinatown and said it's racist of him to close down travel to China and you should just come to Chinatown, everything's fine?
You know what's pretty cringe, calling it the China virus?
What?
You know, it's pretty cringe. Wait.
Let me clarify my question, okay? Okay. This is not. Let me clarify the question. Let me clarify the question, okay? I'm not asking you to speak to how well he handled the crisis in general. I'm asking if you thought that he put forward a lot of false statements about coronavirus itself. And if you don't think so, is there anything that you can name that you think that he has been dishonest about that you think is an issue of importance?
Can I just real quick say, before Trump, it was kind of accepted that politicians lie all the time.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh my God, he's like
no one lied. Wait, do you remember when Barack Obama drone striked an American citizen who just had like loose?
Totally irrelevant. I do remember that because Occupy Wall Street made a huge issue of it. I was actually pretty about it.
Do you remember the when people were bringing that up to him, and then the media was saying the only reason they were bringing it up to him because he was black? I remember that. Like, I'm just saying there's obvious media bias.
There's certain
I'm saying there's media bias on both the right and the left. I think heavy bias is an issue, and I think that Trump's attacks on media in general are warranted. The fact of the matter is,
I have a quick question, TheTerk. I've been wanting to ask this for a while.
Okay, you can ask the question.
No, I was actually literally talking to you just then.
I'm going to...
Yeah, okay, I can respond to the question.
Okay, cool. But then we gotta... Actually, I want to go through the rest of the list. By the way, Vadim, I'm getting a lot of feedback from you.
I apologize. I'll try and... Unfortunately, my headphone jack is kind of fucked up, so
Hopefully this
While
will
that's
help.
getting set up, I have a quick question for the Turk, and I bear with me on this because this is relevant. Is the nation of India in the West or the East?
I'd probably say it's in the East.
Okay, now this is interesting. So with regard to your media study of things being on the left or the right and where they are, if you read the writings of the Zen Buddhists, they will say that the Buddha came from the West because the Buddha came from India. So obviously when you get a study like what you posted in the Discord, where it's like going in a thing, there is a bias in it by selecting where the "you are here" point is, where the center point is. I'm saying that the center point is moved further to the right than the actual center, taking into account the diversity of all major political opinions on the planet.
But to take that logic, you would also think that Bernie Sanders is only slightly left compared to
I
the
do think Bernie
normalized
Sanders is only slightly
left.
Yeah.
So that's not the way.
Left.
If you go to like the neutral camp, he is far left. Socialist.
But the neutral camp is inherently reactionary.
See, that's
they've been moved further
counter
to
to
the
your
right
point.
by American.
The Buddha came from west. Yeah,
no,
it could have been geographically west of somewhere.
The neutral camp in the United States is far to the right of the neutral camp in Europe and pretty much all over the world. Because only the United States utterly destroyed its entire far left movement.
I disagree.
The United States, I mean, Eugene V. Deb ran president from prison and received like 30% of the vote. The fact of the matter is that during the Cold War, it became politically dangerous to be a communist. When communists have been part of this nation ever since communism became a thing. In the same way that it became politically dangerous to be a socialist or politically dangerous to be an anarchist. And thus in the 1980s to the 1980s, these voices were totally suppressed and not allowed within discourse. And so the United States discourse moves further to the left, and the thing that became identified with the left is not actually leftist.
So what?
It's only here.
Wait, that demonstrates kind of the point that Brenton's trying to get across. I'd also like to address Turk. When we looked over Figure 4 of that story, one, that was, I don't even think that was considered statistically significant to make that large of a difference. One, two, I would also say that like the rhetoric that Trump has used, saying things like fake news and reinforcing this aspect about like this bad form of media is spreading across the world, right?
Can I ask you real quick? Was it bad when Fox News was called fake news for 8 years under Obama? Was that bad?
What?
This is wait. You're not even letting me finish. Wait, this has nothing to do with my point inherently. What I'm trying to say is that his rhetoric, right, and the way that he speaks and engages with the media is spreading across the world. We see this, I'm pretty sure, like with Bolsonaro in Brazil. We saw this in Egypt, where 4 days before Trump got to Egypt, they passed fake news laws, which literally made anyone over 5,000 followers considered a news outlet. To say that, like,
long before Trump. What are you talking about?
Wait. I'm talking about exporting this to the like other aspects of the world and then making large differences there.
So what? The president influences the world at large.
Wait. My point is
influences the world in a bad way.
They call Fox
that's not a good way. That's not a good way.
Let's let Polar finish quick.
It's not. You just said Trump's rhetoric calling fake news.
Well,
I rhetoric.
I want to hear the end of Polar's point and throw it to Sus because then we got to wrap it up.
So one aspect of this, what I'm saying is this form of rhetoric is exporting across the world, especially when it comes to other nations where they have stricter and harsher effects. Yes, Sushi, we are an influencer around the world, and that's why what we do matters. Specifically, when it comes to one of the most important aspects of having a free and democratic society is the media in this sense. And when we're pushing laws and aspects that are necessarily criticizing and demonizing the media, even worse than we're doing now, please tell me how that creates a free and democratic society.
Okay, so the same media that said before the election that challenging the election results was an attack on democracy, the same media that has rejected the election results for the last 4 years, right?
It's irrelevant to my point, though, Drone.
It's not at all.
No. It creates a precedent of challenging it every time you guys lose.
That's not the point that I'm trying to make, Sushi. I'm not talking about whether the media. Wait. I'm not actually. Wait. Listen. I'm not talking about whether the media is actually engaging in this form of behavior. What I'm talking about is this individual, our president, is exporting this kind of response and these ways of addressing media. It's not necessarily relevant whether the media is actually doing it or not. What's relevant is this aspect of exporting it to the other parts of the world, where one, they have even worse leaders than we do here, and they're making it much worse for the citizens of that state.
No. He's not exporting a thing. Like, the fact of the matter is, if someone is influenced by the way he carries himself, that's not a conscious effort done by Donald Trump. You're attacking. He's not Machiavelli.
It doesn't have to be a conscious effort.
He's not playing 4D chess, dude. He's just attacking.
Well, of course.
He doesn't have to be. He's an idiot. Yeah, he's an idiot.
Okay. Suspect, you're gonna finish this up, and then we're gonna go into ending statements, which Geek is gonna have to organize. You're already good? Okay, Geek, can you organize ending statements? Because I need to use the bathroom terribly, and moderating while needing to use the bathroom is an extremely stressful position to be in. Oh, I also want to say I'm gonna do something really biased. Eugene Debs, I actually yesterday just studied Eugene Debs in history class. It was 6% of the vote, not 30. Okay, continue. Yeah, 6%.
That's still pretty impressive, but I thought it was 30.
We're gonna do closing statement in the order of webcam. So, hey, it's Vadim. You start. Wait, real quick. I'm sorry to cut you, but apparently Dylan muted you on his end, probably because of the echo. So yeah, we're gonna go to someone else and wait until Dylan comes back because yeah.
I think Sushi was primed up for things before the closing statements.
Yeah. Well, he's next. So yeah, SuspectSushi, your turn.
My closing statement. Basically, all we've heard here is the confirmation bias of people on the left thinking that the basically big tech and all the news outlets that are on their side are being completely fair and balanced and everything that they do, and not biased whatsoever when it comes to covering Trump. Even I can outright admit that there's favoritism and bias from like Fox News, OAN, and things like this to make Trump look better. That's the fact that I just can't. I find it astounding to me that you can't just admit that these things are absolutely happening on both sides. So it just shows that you can't be consistent. Also, I just hear the constant whining and complaining. Oh, Trump's a monster. Trump's a monster. Dude, it is played out, my guy. Like, dude, I gotta be honest with you, Vadim. You seem to be a nice guy, but that lady who was like wailing on the Washington Monument steps did it way better than you. So you might as well just give it up now. Other than that, good old Uhuru for all my boys in chat, and I'm done.
All right. TheTerk.
So I want to answer Vadim's question about if I don't believe or trusted Trump's statements about anything. I will say about the COVID thing, I never really followed what Trump said because I don't find Trump to be an expert when it comes to medical advice. I look towards Dr. Fauci, and you know what happened? He was wrong about several things. The entire CDC was mixed up. There was a bunch of miscommunications, like Dronetek said at the beginning. And, you know, people get facts wrong during this entire pandemic thing. So it's like, you know, if Trump's saying to inject bleach, that's just dumb. And if you believe he's actually advocating that, you're dumb. Okay. And then I think Polar, you had a question for me too. I don't remember what it was. Can you ask that real quick?
Geek, is it okay? I was just mentioning
that
we talked about. Yeah, so that figure, that figure 4, they mentioned in the Senate.
Okay, yeah. So the figure, sure, it's not showing the drastic bias that we were trying to talk about tonight, but what it shows is the trend. And the fact is that the trend shows that there is bias in the media, and that's what this topic is. There is bias. And you guys, I even threw a very heavily biased source of information at you guys, and y'all didn't get to refute it. Sorry.
All right. You can answer that later. Basically, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to interrupt during closing and opening statement. I'm going to throw it to Pisco.
Yeah, I think it's what has been shown on this panel, maybe somewhat effectively by the right wingers, are individual instances of reporters and news outlets being irresponsible, at times biased. Totally accept to the extent that those instances were proven, you know, it's valid, right? So there are instances where reporters fuck up, where they get the wrong story, where they perpetuate a false narrative. No one denies that. It happens in news outlets all the time. It happens on social media all the time. The question, though, is there a larger liberal bias? And I think that bias, if it exists among people and consumers. And whether or not the hands up, don't shoot is an instance of the tail wagging the dog, I think it might be. I think it's people having their own rallying cries and their own slogans, and the media picking up on it. And the media, I see them as more innocent actors in this than people who are perpetuating from the top down narratives which the people are following. I think the people are moving and shaping a lot of the narratives, and the media doesn't really have a dog in the political fight. Some individual reporters might, but I think the media is too diverse to be referred to as an it, and I don't think they have a conscious desire for a political end one way or the other.
All right. Real quick, I just posted in the chat every source given during this debate in the group. In the future, if you post a source in the group, please post it in the Dylan's chat as well. Dylan, can you unmute Creationist cat on your end? Basically, because he couldn't give his closing statement.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I had him muted due to the feedback. But yeah, now you can give your closing statement.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, I'll just briefly speak to SuspectSushi. Sorry, that's a hard name to say. His strawman about my point of view. Yeah, I think that there is a basic media bias that is somewhat superficial. I don't think that it goes much further than kind of advocating for left-wing candidates. And, I mean, I just there are certain ways in which I would definitely say that there happens to be some left-wing bias. I don't think like across the board, I would never say that it's fair and balanced and completely 50-50, nor do I think it should be. When it comes to lies that Trump told about coronavirus, I mean, I was just looking things over. These are just some of them. He said the coronavirus very early on would weaken when we get into April in the warmer weather. That was total bullshit. He said that the outbreak would be temporary. He said that if the economic shutdown continues, there will be an uptick in deaths by suicide. Totally unsupported claim. This just goes on and on and on. There's like endless. I'm just looking through a list of them that The Atlantic has. All of these things, and there's far more dangerous claims than that. But there's really the thing that I want to hammer the most here is that I truly do think, aside from whatever kind of consensus we have or lack of consensus we have on the nature of the media in general and its propensity to go to the left or the right or the center, it doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, what I really want to say is that Trump is actively a threat to the spirit of the freedom of the press. And it's just not just that, but also just scientific facts, and kind of we've seen a further diminishing as a result of him as being president of the intelligence of America and things that's like why I said at the outset that idiotic things like QAnon are taking hold. It's very, 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 I would say, sparked by Trump himself. People kind of look to leaders and mimic them, or just kind of really take to heart the things that they say. And you can see his bullshit statements just being totally QAnon sucks them up. And there are a lot of other people who aren't quite as bad as QAnon who sucks them up. So yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. There you go.
Okay, next, let me check the list that Geek sent me because he is so nice to me. Let me check. It is next is going to be Dronetek.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to. I've been embroiled in this stuff for a long time, so there's a lot to say. But let me just say, first of all, you guys are all really smart, and you guys are all real respectful, and I enjoyed this. The problem with this debate, it's a hard debate because a lot of it is shaped by people's perspectives, and I'm just as susceptible to that as anybody else. I mean, our perspectives are shaped by the media in a lot of ways. First of all, I think Trump's attacks on the media are legit. I think he does go too far sometimes, but I think that Trump himself is a result of a corrupt media. That people aren't stupid. I mean, if you look at polling going back 20 years, trust in media has been dropping. The only people where it stayed pretty consistent is the Democrats. Everybody else, independents, Republicans, it's been dropping for a long time. So it's not Trump's fault. And when you say like Trump, he's exporting this, I mean, come on. I mean, they were calling Fox News fake news for 8 years. Phone news, remember that? That was like a big thing. So that didn't start with Trump. Trump just kind of flipped it back. media is undoubtedly, guys, it's undoubtedly an extension of the Democrat Party. I don't say you can deny it. I mean, you were talking about individual instances of issues, Pisco. It's not individual. There's a definite pattern. I mean, if you look at these mistakes, at least, I mean, as long as I've been paying attention, they always cut one way. They always cut against the right. And a lot of times these mistakes come about because of the preconceived notions of the people reporting. And a great example of that is the Covington kid thing. I mean, the reason the media fell for that is because it initially confirmed all their biases, and they fell for it. Same with the news thing. I mean, and those are just the high profile ones. Guys, I make a living off of talking about this stuff daily. Okay, so it's a daily thing. And it's a definite pattern. Like I said, it's always on the right. I mean, you talk about science too. Like, I'm a right winger. I love science. And, maybe Trump's not the best ambassador of science, but science is not the domain of the left. They don't own it. All right. The left also says that men can have babies. And I don't want to get off into the weeds of that.
They can.
Okay.
They technically can.
They absolutely
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, sadly, you cannot.
That's completely insane to me. But anyway, so I mean, there's tons. We can go down the list of the things. The media is comprised of mostly Democrats. It's mostly donates to Democrats. They mostly supported Clinton. I mean, the only legitimate election is one won by Democrats. When you look at it, I mean, remember Bush? It was a conspiracy theory when he won both times, and then Obama wins, all clear. Then Trump wins. Oh, it's conspiracy theory. All right, so it's never legitimate. Look at the midterms. Democrats did well. The all clear was given. It's all good. That's legitimate. Oh, if Trump wins, that's not legitimate. The only legitimate scandal, apparently, is one involving Republicans, because the media and the FBI comes out and says, oh, it's the Russians. If there's denigration that you see against Joe Biden, that's the Russians. So we're not even allowed to criticize Democrats or the media. If you criticize the media, you're attacking the media. You're attacking democracy. It's just this pattern. So that, I mean, I guess that's my closing argument. If you get on Twitter and someone was talking about, oh, it's not all the reporters, it's just some. Dude, guys, I follow all the reporters on Twitter. They're all left-wing activists, all of them. They all post the same stuff every day. It's always, from the left, attacking Republicans, putting Republicans. I mean, guys, we can go look at interviews between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans from the mainstream media of Democrats it's always softballs. If they get any criticism at all, it's from the left. Republicans, it's like they're hostile witnesses, being interviewed by the police. So, I mean, and like I said, we could go back and forth on these examples all day, but in my mind, the media is tearing this country apart with their lies by omission, their cherry picking of stories to report and data to present to the public. And when they talk about delegitimizing the election and that it's Trump doing that, guys, that's what they're doing. They're saying that if Trump wins, the only way he can win is if he's cheating. The media has been attacking our election institution from the beginning. They've been saying that the Russian. So all I'm saying is that by their own standards, they're the problem. And so that's my closing argument.
Okay. Next, we're going to be throwing it over. Let me check Geeks list. It's going to be Polar.
For everyone in chat, I'd like to ask one question. Everyone here as well. What is the media? Okay, is the media the millions of people that watch network TV, which is headed by Fox News? Is the media the 244.5 million Americans who listen to the radio each month? Number two being the most popular aspect of radio being news talk? Is media Facebook, where conservative groups run wild? Is media YouTube, where we have people like Tim Pool who grifts and spread his ideas, right? So even on this panel, we've talked about how the media is a monolith, right? The media does this, the media does that. It's a perfect parrot of Trump's talking points. The media is this, the media is that. But we've already come to this nuanced conclusion that, hey, the media isn't this conglomerate, right? So when we get to figures like Trump, who necessarily devalue what the press is, what media is, this is a harmful aspect to our basic institutions. For example, I think Turk brought this up, but yes, sometimes science is wrong. But when you have people like Trump who purposely just ignore people in his administration that are acknowledging and telling him of what's actually going on, and he chooses just to lay it off and risk almost 100,000 American lives, that's a form of misinformation and distrust that I can't accept. I think this is really harmful. He ignores it, and we see it around the world at this point, right? Like exporting this to a certain extent, even if people like Obama called Fox News fake news, it's not nearly to the extent that Trump has done, and we can see it spreading across the world. Honestly, and I think everyone else here would agree, is I don't want the state, President Trump, or the next president to be the source of news for millions of Americans. Yes, a lot of Americans are stupid. I have to be honest. And that's probably why we shouldn't have a president who spreads misinformation and risks potentially millions of lives.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Brenton.
Hey guys, thank you very much. And thank you, by the way, for correcting me on the Eugene Debs. It was 6%. I looked that up. Still, that's a ridiculously huge percentage. That's more than Gary Johnson got in the last vote, and that was with two historically unliked candidates going up against him. So a huge advantage for third parties there. 910,000 people voted for him. So my point is that it was sizable, but I'm sorry I got the actual numbers wrong. Now, as far as the media itself, I think it's absolutely ridiculous to say that that it has a liberal bias. Fox News is still the media, the most watched network. Tucker Carlson is the most watched cable news show of all time. So to say that the media has this left-wing bias is to ignore literally 100% of the right-wing sources. And finally, I think what I'll just end with is I wanted to say how ridiculous it is to accuse the people on the left here, including myself, of not holding the liberal media to account when they lie. I began this stream by talking about Michael Bloomberg, the liberal candidate for president, like one of the liberal candidates for president this last time around, getting the okay from the head of the New York Times that he would take his side no matter what when he raided Zuccotti Park. And again, we had, I believe it was Chris Matthews, freaking out that he was going to be beheaded by Bernie Sanders. So objectively, like, the media has a number of biases, and oftentimes reporters are trying to sell you a specific narrative for any number of reasons. But the idea that this is a left-wing narrative and must be countered by right-wing bias is just a piece of propaganda that the right-wingers use to get people to ignore sources that don't agree with them and accept sources that already agree with them. I said earlier that projection is a product of a fascist mindset. And, you know, that's what I'm hearing when I hear accusations that we have not held the liberal media to task. We absolutely have. But, you know, you noticed here that the conservatives would not hold the conservative media to task, would not hold Donald Trump to task when asked. None of them could answer that. I'm speaking now. You get to speak later. So anyway, in summation, I think that the media is absolutely biased, but it is biased in many different ways. And as far as like major mainstream media goes, it is biased towards the particular opinions and bottom lines of its editorial board, its CEOs, and its shareholders. And this is a problem and why we should not have for-profit media at all.
Okay, let me check the list to see who's next. Next, it would be IPA. This will be your, not only your ending statement, but also your time to drop all your links and profile, because the beast has arrived, per se.
Yes, I will exit and leave you guys to, or leave you all to a much more charismatic and funny person who has a way sexier voice than I do. P.S. Whoever's talking, there's
Drone,
like
your mic is once again. Your mic is you know what? Clintons have got involved. That's what's going on. But IPA,
He's channeling boomer energy.
It's the media. They're getting it's, you know what it is. It's Comcast who controls, you know, all of our internets, right? But the media has a responsibility to act as a watchdog. I 100% agree with that notion. It's important to not only the American people, but just the country in general, politics, right? that responsibility should be to call out when there are untruths or mistruths or anything like that. It should not be, however, to just counteract. It's not a scale, right? It's not say, oh, Trump said something really idiotic, let's say something else to weigh that, to counteract that, right? It should be to correct and tell the truth. Is there a liberal bias in the media right now? I don't know, because there's also a Republican bias, as a lot of people have pointed out, right? Is the liberal bias maybe a little bit louder these days? Yeah, probably, because again, they're trying to just counterbalance that weight, right? Of all of the, frankly, asinine things that Trump has said. Can we really eliminate that bias ever? No, especially when 8 companies control all of the media in this country. Well, again, like the mainstream media, the traditional media sources. No, absolutely not. P.S. I was wrong about the Fox News thing. The Fox News Corporation formed after Disney acquired Fox itself. It kind of broke off from it. So I stand corrected on that. So, and no, I don't think any of this bias is really as nefarious as some people are suggesting, to say, oh, they're covering up white deaths. No, they're just telling stories that get people to tune in, to watch their ads, to click on their links. And that's where the money goes, right? So yeah, does it exist? Yes. Is it maybe a little louder from the left? Yes. But it exists on both sides.
Okay. Would you like to shout yourself out before you head out?
Yeah, Dylan, I appreciate having me on again. This is the second time this week that I've been on here, so I appreciate that. If you want to hear more of my rambling nonsense, you can find me over at twitch.tv/IPA_lot. Like I said, I do Mondays. I do D&D with a couple other Twitch politics streamers here. Sushi, Tiberius, Endernax, RGB, and Spectre Syndicalism. Wednesdays, my wife and I do marriage and family stuff. We talk about our relationship, raising kids. We do, like AMA relationship advice. I would like to, if anyone out there wants to do this, I would love to rate people's dating apps or profiles. We were talking about, we actually created a fake one the other week, just because we were kind of examining the questions and do they attract the kind of people that you're trying to attract, or are you answering the questions in a way that work like that? I would love to do that. If anyone wants to volunteer to do that with me on stream, I would love to. Send me a message. So yeah, thanks again.
I'm gonna have to join you for that D&D, bro.
Right on.
Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate you coming in last second to save the show. And now we have Wake the Beast, who has made an entrance. We're about to start the next topic, Wake. Would you like to do a quick intro before we go into the next topic?
Certainly. And again, Dylan, thank you very much for your invitation and for your patience in waiting for me to arrive. What I would like to say is, historically, you could say that America itself is a little left-leaning. Let's not forget that this is a country that was founded on the flames of rebellion. We stood up to King George and said these states ought to be free, or at least that's what Henry Lee said. I motioned that these states be free. By doing this, he was committing high treason, which made him liable to be hanged. And can you imagine what would have happened if no one else seconded that motion and it was just Henry Lee by himself committing that act of sedition against his king? But of course, other people did second him. But I think that today, it's a little oversimplifying to say that the media is left-leaning. Personally, I don't think that left and right do much to distinguish individuals, but it is a lot more effective to think of people as advocates of their various theoretical sociological viewpoints, okay? And one of the most popular ones is the conflict perspective. This is the outlook of those who feel that the world is divided up into groups of people who are in competition over limited resources and power. This is how they see the world. And I think that if there is a bias or an audience that the media plays to, it's these individuals, because everything the media says tends to be us versus them. If someone else is winning, it's at your expense. If you're losing, it's because of someone else's actions. And these individuals, who may not necessarily be left-leaning, some of them can be conservative, but if they have the conflict perspective, they're going to latch on to this. They're going to go out into the media, into the public, and repeat these ideas, which essentially equates to free advertising for the advertisers who advertise on those stations. That's my take on it.
Wonderful. I'm happy to have you on, Wake.
Before we move on, can I just, I'm sorry, you can go ahead and say what you want, but I was just hoping that I could interject something that I was going to say at the top, because I wanted to sort of do a little shout to Wake the Beast now that he's here.
Okay, you want to Okay, call him out. What do you?
I just wanted to say, Mr. Beast, or what do you prefer being called?
Whatever you call me, I'm the same person. But some people call me Wake, some people call me Beast.
Okay,
What would you like to call me?
Mr. Beast, last week I believe that you told my friend Jangles that he has the soul of a cat. And I just want to say, I think you blew your metaphor wad a little prematurely. I do indeed have the soul of a cat. And we are a fierce but noble race. And my cat soul indeed carries the DNA of my ancient ancestors, like the saber-toothed tiger, the Smilodon populator, the most gargantuan feline to ever roam the earth. Look it up on Google. It's pretty cool. So I just don't want any besmirching of cats here tonight, or I don't know. I'll eat you like a tasty manwich. So that being said,
just to correct you, it wasn't last week. And your friend and yourself don't have the soul of a cat. You have the heart of a cat.
Okay.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well.
Yes. Yes.
By the way, since I got muted like early on, could I do another
cat heart
introduction?
is fierce and strong.
I do want another What do you mean? For what?
Like just a quick introduction, since mine didn't get read, and then you guys never came back to me.
Did you not do an outro?
I did an outro, but no, like at the beginning when like we were introducing ourselves. Remember, my mic wasn't working right, and people couldn't hear like my background or who I was.
Sure. I do want to say though that the more interruptions we have, the least likely we're going to be able to get to the third topic.
Okay, I'll go very, very quickly.
Okay.
So for those of you who do not know me and are wondering who this guy is, my name is Brenton Lengel. I do a lot of debates on modern day debate. I am a playwright, poet, Appalachian Trail 2000 miler, and I'm the author of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, which has been nominated for 2 Ringo Awards. Check out my YouTube channel where I talk about philosophy, anarchism, Buddhism, politics, religion, all that wonderful stuff.
I think you did intro that. Yeah, you talked about how you're a comic book author and that it's now shipping out, and yeah.
Okay, my mistake then.
Line he didn't get in, but anyway.
Okay.
Oh, I see. I didn't know how much had been cut out. I apologize.
Okay, well,
I didn't catch the title of the book. I'm sorry.
And Dylan, I'm good to go whenever. So just so you know.
What do you mean?
Well, because I asked you, I said like, don't pick me first, but I'm fine going first. That's the way you want to do it.
Are you two coordinatedly fucking with me right now? I
gotta piss.
I can't tell.
Oh my god.
Okay.
What year is this?
Okay, we're done. Everybody shut up. We're going to the next topic. Okay?
No, we're not.
We're not?
This is my time to interject.
Is it?
So real quick.
He's been muted. Okay, so we're going to the next topic, okay? The next topic is debating the Supreme Court. We all know what I mean by
I can unmute myself. It's too late.
Geek, please just let me go on to the next topic. You know I gotta do my whole... Okay, the next topic, okay, is... gotta scroll up because you guys have been arguing in the chat. Should the Senate confirm a new Supreme Court pick now or after the election? I'll repeat it one more time. Should the Supreme Court...
Should the Senate...
You should decide. God, you guys have you've messed my head up. You know what the hell it is. Just talk. Intros. I'm gonna start with Brenton. You've all messed up my mind. You've all messed me up.
Okay, so you're starting with.
Yes, Brenton.
Okay.
No, the other Brenton.
I thought you were telling me that I had messed up your mind. All right. So as far as the Supreme Court, there's a longer video on my channel about my thoughts about this and the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. My feeling on it is that the Supreme Court should not appoint a new Chief Justice. And in fact, I think we should never appoint another Supreme Court Chief Justice, and we should not have a Supreme Court, or if we do, they should never be appointed for life. It makes absolutely no sense to imbue any individual with that amount of power. And this institution is something that I think is inherently dangerous to the American people. Now, that said, do I think they will? Absolutely, they're going to appoint another thing. There's nothing anybody can do with it. So what I would say is, that'll get through, fight it as hard as you can. And once that's over, pack it with 500 people or just abolish the body entirely. America overall has had a huge problem with concentrating large amounts of power in fewer and fewer hands. And the more power you concentrate in fewer and fewer hands, the more likely that a foolish, stupid, or evil person will get a hold of that power and do immense damage. So toss the ring into Mount Doom.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Polar.
Oh, my position on this is actually very interesting, I guess you could say. I don't know if I want to necessarily see another contention for an election like we did with Bush and Gore in places like Florida. I can see the value in having a Supreme Court, but do I want the Republicans getting another pick at the Supreme Court? Probably not. I don't know if it's viable or not, but personally, I would like for them to not pick another Supreme Court justice. I think it is funny coming from a lot of Republicans, and I've heard Democrats do this as well. But it is pretty funny for them to necessarily have these kinds of statements about, yes, we should put another person on there, we should nominate another individual, but then 4 years ago, it's the same crap where it's like you shouldn't have an election year. I think it's pretty lazy. I think it's it's hypocrisy at this point, and it kind of demonstrates that there's no form of like, I guess you can say actual precedent. It's all about gaining power. So they're going to do what they need to get who they want in.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Wake the Beast.
Thomas Hobbes made it very clear that the only thing you should be concerned about when it comes to electing a sovereign over you is whether or not this individual is capable of holding in trust the social contract that obliges all men to give away their natural right, which means you may not use any means necessary to preserve your organism. So I'm a firm believer that democracy is a false light. It is a light that illuminates darkness for people who have no greater reason to agree with each other than the fact that they both are okay with compromising. That seems to be the mantra. However, I won't avoid the question. When you take a look at the American Constitution, it makes it very clear what should happen in a situation like this. I'm going to quote to you Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. It says, and the president shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and councils, judges of the Supreme Court. So there's nothing in this that says that an exception should be made because of it being an election year. So the question should not be should we appoint a Supreme Court justice? The question should be, why shouldn't we? The people who feel that this process should stop should explain themselves. Why should we stop a process that has been functioning since the inception of this country now? That's my time.
Okay, next I'm going to be throwing it over to Pisco.
Yes. I first want to address, I think, a reprehensible statement made by Brenton that the Supreme Court as an institution should not exist anymore. It's important to have neutral, unpolitical, nonpartisan, politically independent judiciary that analyzes the law, looks at precedent, and rides high over all other courts. So I think it's important to have a Supreme Court for those reasons. With respect to nominating justice during an election year, I think it's silly that there be a rule that says that you're not supposed to nominate a justice during an election year. We don't want more democratic accountability for our judiciary. In fact, I think it's a bad state of affairs for our judiciary that people sort of see elections now as referendums on judges. And I think that is a mistake and shouldn't be done. I think sort of proposals to give term limits or re-election periods or something like that for judges is totally wrong-headed. I don't want judges to be directly elected by the people in this country. That said, once having a rule that's established, it is fundamental to the notions of fair play and justice that rule be continued. So it was a dumb rule when McConnell suggested it and sort of enforced it in 2016. It's still a dumb rule, but it being a dumb rule doesn't mean we shouldn't follow it. Rules should be consistently followed across time, and it shouldn't be the case that the rules as applied to one set of political or partisan interests aren't applied to their opposite or to the other party. I think that anyone who thinks that they should explain what the guiding principle is that would distinguish these sets of circumstances from what was happening with Obama and Merrick Garland. I don't think anyone here will try to make a reasoned and principled distinction between the facts of 2016 and the facts now. What they're going to say is It's power politics. You're naive for thinking that this was anything ideological. They just have the power to do so they're going to do it. That, I think, is an honest approach. It's troubling, but it's honest. What I'm not interested in is in hearing any sort of philosophical or principle distinction between the facts here and the facts beforehand, or any ad hoc reasoning that explains them in some way, or citing to the quote-unquote Biden rule, which is not apposite here for reasons we'll get into. So that, for that reason, I would be against any nomination of into the Supreme Court and any confirmation until after the election, given that the rule was established in 2016 and it must be followed even though it's a dumb rule.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Dronetek Politics.
My turn. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean,
dude, the mic.
Turn it off and on again.
He might be putting it in, like, minimizing the Discord thing. I've noticed that.
No, it's my software mixer. For some reason, it reacts weird to some things. So I pretty much agree. I'm going to disappoint you, Pisco, because I do think that it's kind of a political posturing thing at this point. But there are two differences between now and what happened in 2016. One, Obama was a lame duck. He had no chance of re-election. I'm echoing in somebody. He had no chance of re-election. Okay, we had two new people running for president. Trump is still serving out his first term, still carrying out the action, and one of those duties that he has is filling the seat. And also, Democrats didn't control the Senate under Obama. So there are differences. It's not exactly the same. And I'm sorry. I mean, Republicans use Biden's own words. I get that Biden was just making a hypothetical argument, but they used it against him, and it was a political move. And I mean, you can fault the Republicans for that, but I mean, if the Republicans are hypocrites in this situation, then everybody's a hypocrite, because the media and the Democrats, what a strange coincidence. They both took the same position as usual, but they both thought that there should be a vote on the nominee. So I think that the Republicans should go for it. They control the Senate and the White House, and Trump is still executing out his duties as president. Obama was at the very end of his second term, a lame duck. So it's a big difference.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Vadim.
Can't hear you, Vadim.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
To wake the beasts question, confirmations typically take at least 70 days. We're going to get a rushed sham of a process pretty much no matter what if we go ahead this way. I have a much more substantial reason, but that will take a while to go into. So I'm just going to go into what do we actually mean when we say should, because we're not really talking about the Dems here. They don't have any power. Their hands are tied. We're really talking about the Republicans here. And if we are talking through the lens of basic ethics and actions that don't reek of hypocrisy, well, then I think, of course not. We all know that they dragged their feet for an entire year. You said that it was a lame duck session. Typically, lame duck sessions are thought of the last few months of an administration, not an entire final year of an administration. So, yeah, we all know that they dragged their feet. Just about all the key Republicans who spoke at the time made remarks that totally fly in the face of what they say now. For instance, Mitch McConnell said something to the effect of, the decision remains about a principle and not a person. The Senate will appropriately revisit the matter when it considers the qualifications of the nominee the next president nominates, whoever that might be. I'm a fucking turtle. Something like that. So everyone from Cruz, Lindsey, Graham pretty much said the same thing, and now they're saying the opposite. It's unethical also because numerous polls show that anywhere between 58% to 65% of Americans believe that the seat should wait until after the elections. But if we look at it through another lens of should, Chris Rock had a really great bit about the public reaction to the Siegfried and Roy Tiger attack catastrophe. The joke is basically something to the effect of, people say that tiger went crazy. That tiger didn't go crazy. That tiger went tiger. So I bring that up because the Republicans are going to go Republican. what's hypocritical, decent, or best for ensuring democracy is handled with the attention and care it deserves. Never been an issue or stopped them from doing horrible things before. They have that power. So from like a haha sucker perspective, yeah, they should totally do it. It gives them a tremendous advantage. And lastly, I'll just say this, I sincerely doubt that any of my right-wing friends here, I really doubt that any of them care about earning my respect. But if you make the case tonight that this is some brand of, or that this is not some brand of ethical horseshit, I will probably most likely think that your arguments will be a joke. Maybe you can win me over. But I'm not going to lie, just that. But if you chalk it up to too bad, so sad, all's fair in love and war, that kind of thing, you lose, so suck my dick. Something like that, something that's tantamount to that, I will respect that far more. Or if you agree that we should hold off, well, then honestly, my hat, it goes off to you. You're a principled person.
Wonderful. Next, I'm going to throw it over to SuspectSushi.
All right. Can you hear me? Hello? All right.
Mhm.
Hi, just to reiterate, I don't know if people know who I am. I'm SuspectSushi. I'm writer of the Game of Thrones. If you haven't got it yet, go ahead and get that. I'm also the graphic designer for it as well. I just wanted to make sure I reiterated it for the second time that I'm here. Also, I just want to talk about the correspondence between Jake Tapper and what is his name, Mark Short. Basically they had the exact same interpretation, but by the way, Polar dude, shout out to you for having the exact same carbon copy leftist talking point about this. It was really cute. Basically it says it's pretty easy historical precedent. Of the 29 I laid out before you, there are 19 vacancies that happened when the majority party was the same party the president. Of those 19, 9 out of 10 were confirmed before the election day, and the other 8 out of 9 after election day in the lame duck period. So it shows precedent. And then we have some more. Take the separate scenario in which a party in control in the Senate is a different party than the president. There are 10 such vacancies. Only 1 out of the 10 was filled before election day, and you have to go back to the 1880s to find an example under Grover Cleveland's presidency. So actually, the historical precedent is pretty clear. When you have the party in power in the Senate whose job it is to advise and consent and confirm the president's nominee, it continuously has shown historically that it is the job of the Senate to confirm the presidential nomination, and history shows its presidential obligation to make a nomination. And to speak on your hypocrisy thing, because he said it almost verbatim, he also responded to this. He said, "I reject the notion as hypocrisy." Short replied, "Historical precedent is when your party's in power and consistently going back to George Washington, the party has continued to confirm those nominations." Pretty much point blank period. Confirm it. Also, I'm pretty sure Donald Trump already, confirmed his pick, and we should ram that right on through. Also, let's go and get Roe v. Wade overturned and leave it to the states. Cool, thanks.
Okay, hell of an ending. I'm going to throw it over to TheTerk.
Yeah, so Vadim, I'm glad you are looking for people that are of character. I would usually say that I'm a pretty, decent person, and I like to listen to other people's opinions. And going into this whole confirmation process, I was actually of the opinion that, we have bigger things to worry about. We need to win the presidency. We need to retain the Senate. We need to get more seats in the House. But then I started hearing what some of the liberals and political left are trying to do: pack the courts, abolish the electoral college, all these other really outlandish things. You're trying to change the way the system operates. And I was actually told on Twitter, by being nice, you lose. Yeah, so guys, you've shown me your playbook. I don't agree with the way y'all are wanting to go about it. So I think it's up to the Senate, just like Sushi said. Follow the historical precedent. It is their job to confirm or deny. There's that possibility to deny a senator or a Supreme Court justice. So that's it.
Okay, that'll be everything for now. And I will now turn it over to open dialogue on the issue of the Supreme Court. I am looking at time constraints, and it's looking like we might not be able to get to a third topic. I've also been texted something that a personal issue has come up with a family member in the hospital, which means that after this topic, I most certainly am probably going to have to end it. But I want to get this last topic out of the way. So we're going to do this topic on the Supreme Court, and then we're probably going to wrap it up. I'm sorry for everybody who studied foreign policy or the last issue, but That's pretty important. So I'm gonna just...
Hopefully we can do it another time, and you can invite me on because I did a lot of research for that, and I'd like it to go to good use.
Got it. Okay.
Hold on, I just want to say I hope everything's all right.
Yeah, it's just
yes, yeah, same.
Yeah, it's just my my grandfather who raised me is just I don't really want to get too into it, but let's just get into the topic, okay? Great.
I have a question. I would like to say one exact thing. Also, RGB, rest in peace. She said a president is a president for its full four terms and should be respected as such. The narrative that like on the third year that you shouldn't respect them as much as like the previous like 3 is kind of ridiculous to me. So the president has as well within their rights to do so. And also, we can also go to the quote of Lindsey Graham. He said if Donald Trump wins, this was in 2016. If Donald Trump wins and there's a vacancy in the seat, like he should absolutely be well within his rights to fill that seat. Now, of course, he's like flip-flopping back and forth because he's a spineless rhino, but that's besides the point. I'm just showing that there is precedent for these things, and I've already brought up the historical relevance.
Wait.
I
have a question that just clarifies what you're already saying. I don't want to jump in with a lot. I was just wondering if you had a precedent for this exact situation where there was literally this short amount of time in which to do something like this.
To my, I don't have exact numbers on each case by case basis of the 29 times it's happened since 1880. I can get back to you on that, but I feel like that's a little bit too muddying the waters. I think that no.
I'll speak to that
later. Vadim, we actually have some that are later. It was during the lame duck part of the presidency, which is actually after the election, and it was still put through. So, I mean, if you want to go with that, we have things considerably later than what we have right now.
Sushi, with all due respect, and I mean this sort of totally, I'm not trying to do anything here, but so just because there are differences in distinguishing factors between yes, you know that was.
No, I hear you.
Okay, cool. Just because the mere fact that something is distinguishable doesn't mean that it's different in substance. So the question is, why should it matter whether or not the houses are different on a principle basis? On one sort of telling of it, you can say that, okay, well, the fact that they have the Senate means that they have the power to do this. But if the rationale, policy rationale for having this rule not to nominate during someone's presidential year is to let the people decide, I disagree with that rule. But if that's the rationale, and that seems to be the rationale, why would it matter?
Whether it's lost your beautiful face, buddy.
I know, I'm trying to get back in. I don't know why take me out of the whereby. Why should it matter whether or not it's a lame duck session, whether the Senate is controlled by the same party? If the rationale is to let the people decide, it shouldn't matter, should it?
Yeah. What I'd like to say to the Turk really quickly is, based upon your opening, I think it's kind of inherently ridiculous to associate.
Can I get an answer? What the fuck?
What?
I'm thinking of the answer because, like, honestly, it seems like one of those like, what is life things that you got me with before when we had our little thing about abortion. So it's like, I'm thinking about it. Let them talk. I'm thinking about it. I'm
real quick. Sorry to interrupt, but we got some echo. I think it's coming from Creationist cat. Apparently, there's a huge echo in the stream.
Okay.
So you were asking me, correct?
Is it still echoing?
Okay.
I don't hear echo. You, Sushi, or Drone, anyone who's trying to say, well, this time it's a lame duck session, or this time it's the parties are different.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. So of the direct quotes that I was using between the interaction between Jake Tapper and Mark Short, basically they were actually just using it to basically say that there was a differentiation between of timing periods between before and after an election.
Wait, it's different. So I agree that it's different.
No, we have both instances. Right now, Donald Trump is within the instances before the election, and we have some instances after the election, and both of which they were still being adhered to. So you have no ground to stand on to say that we shouldn't do this because we've done it since the 1800s.
Sushi, right. I agree that it's
to do that, right?
I agree that it's different. But the senators also have different things for lunch that morning of the confirmation hearings.
No.
There needs to be a connection, a link.
I'm saying it's the same. It's consistent throughout American history that we do this. I'm not saying it's different whatsoever. And then when you say, oh, but like they're so close to the election, I'm like, well, here's all the instances we did it close to the election, and here's all the instances we did it directly after the election when they were a lame duck.
You're not hearing me. You're not hearing me. The rationale is the people should have an input. close to the election. That's the rationale.
People have input through their elected officials in the Senate. What do you mean?
So I don't understand how you can say that on one hand for Trump, and then what was your opinion in 2016?
Well, what was Democrats and the media's opinion in 2016?
To be fair, I wasn't even paying attention to the SCOTUS pick in 2016. Sorry. So.
Okay, so if the rationale is we don't have to wait for the people's vote or the people's direct thing during the election, but all of a sudden when it's the Senate we like, now we've already heard from the people, that seems to be two different rationales, right?
I gave you a rationale that didn't even dictate whether or not it came from a Democrat or a Republican. It just gave you pure base numbers. So
you gave me facts that are different, right? I can distinguish a lot of things differently. There were cars in one instance, there weren't in another one, right? So there are ways you can distinguish these factors. There was parties that existed now that didn't exist then. So I hear that they're different. The question is, why should there be different results?
Actually, don't think you listen to me. I gave you an instance where the Senate was the same as the president, and when the Senate was opposed to the president, and on both sides, except for one instance of 29, they did not confirm. That's I give you both sides.
So, no, you're giving me the fact that these differences produce different results. First of all, I don't know the instances you're talking about, but why should the fact that these differences produce different results? Why did they? Why should they? It doesn't make sense. If your rationale is democratic legitimacy, give the people a vote, give the people a stake, it shouldn't matter whether the party's controlled by different, which either house is controlled by different branches, or whether the president's in a lame duck session. It shouldn't matter, right?
No, it absolutely does matter because it actually defeats the narrative that we shouldn't do this and it's like wrong or we're trying to jam it all up or whatever. This is the thing. I really personally feel, I'm being honest, I feel like you're just trying to muddy the waters here and pivot away from the point that we have a historical over 200 years of history of where we've done this, and you're like, oh no, in this case, because it's Donald Trump and I don't agree with him, and I also don't have the Senate seat filled, that I'm against it now. We can't do that.
To a certain extent, that is if you're appealing to tradition, that's what you're doing here. I just looked it up, and since 1975, the average time that it's taken to confirm a Supreme Court nomination is 67 days. The median is 71 days. Again, we are going to have a very rushed process with this, and that alone is a huge reason why we shouldn't do it. The times perhaps have increased over the years, but that's because we've learned that we have to do more proper.
I have one statement for you and one question. Statement. I've already shown that we have things after an election and before one, and also all these SCOTUS picks already passed committee approval beforehand, before the list was even put out. And two, this is a very big question, huge question mark.
I'm talking about the confirmation process. I'm talking about the whole.
It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter.
Absolutely matters.
No,
by the way, are you a Proud Boy? Are you a Proud Boy? You're dressed like a Proud Boy.
What does that have to do with the question at hand?
I'm just curious. I really want to know if you're a Proud Boy.
No. What does that have to do with the question at hand, buddy?
Nothing. It has nothing to do with it.
Okay,
yeah, you're correct, but I just wanted to know. Okay, all right.
Are you a cat?
Why? Yes, I am. Meow meow.
Can I just ask two questions?
Listen, Vadim, I have zero idea why you would ask me those things. Okay, I have zero clue.
Because you're dressed like one.
You need to chill out. Okay.
You're dressed like one. I'm just curious.
You need to chill out. You need to chill.
I'm not. Hey, I'm totally. Hey, I'm chillax, dude.
Sushi.
Two questions. So two things. One, like eat like
I can't hear
you. Sound like a drone.
Pisco, there may be some so my understanding of the statement that Pisco is trying to make is that, one, I don't think Pisco is going to disagree with Sushi that this has happened in the past, but I think Pisco is trying to get at, like, why is this happening and why would this still apply, right? Is that what you're trying to?
Yeah. So one is, I think 2016 is an aberration. I think what McConnell did in 2016 isn't backed by precedent, to be honest with you. Also, so that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is, why have this rule? Why should it be the case that we, on certain times, we should wait and let the people weigh in? Can I ask anyone who's in favor of the rule as stated? Is anyone in favor of this rule?
That we confirm the SCOTUS pick from the president?
No, sorry. So the as applied to Obama in 2016. Was anyone in favor of that?
In favor of what?
I honestly didn't. I wasn't even.
Was anyone in favor of holding off the Merrick Garland nomination?
Absolutely not.
No,
Was anyone-
definitely
I
not.
wasn't even paying attention to it at the time, so I don't have an opinion on it.
You don't have an opinion? Shouldn't you have an opinion on it?
No, I didn't. I had no knowledge of it, so I'm not going to talk about something I had no foundation of knowledge on. That's stupid. Also, to answer your question, Vadim, yes.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you for being honest. Can you
no, it was
imagine?
pretty obvious. Like,
it was, but I just had to ask. Can you guys just imagine?
my Twitter account's gone now. By the way.
Okay, great. Can you guys imagine what would occur if the opposite happened with if Trump was a lame duck president and there was a year's worth of obstruction? I mean, of course, people would argue that it was that it had happened before, but let's say it hadn't. There's no way that the Republicans would ever stand for it. They'd say like, "Oh, crazy Democratic obstructionism," and it's just look again. If you guys want to say, "Hey, we got the power," fuck you, suck a dick. You guys can't do anything about it. That's totally great. That's totally fine. I respect that. But if you're saying like this is like
principle,
but yeah, exactly. Then I don't know how you can earnestly argue that.
Just say it's power politics.
Yeah.
So I want to add on, like what I was trying to say earlier with regard to the Turk. I think it's really unfair and ridiculous to try to equate my opinions as a political anarchist with the opinions of the mainstream Democratic left. You even saw Pisco, who's more or less a progressive, attack me over my position on that. He believes that the Supreme Court can be a non-political overseeing thing. I think this is ridiculous and naive. But the fact of the matter is that the Democrats and the people in power think much more like Pisco than they think like me. I wish they'd think like me, and that way we wouldn't even have a president because that's stupid. But, nobody asked me.
True. I think that's true. Wait, so Sushi, just to tell you real quick, the argument in 2016, if you don't know about it, is the people should have a chance to weigh in. That was the argument made by Republicans across the board, right? People should have a democratic input into the Supreme Court, and that's why we can't allow Merrick Garland even to be heard, even have a confirmation hearing, right? That's the argument as presented then. Do you agree with that rationale?
Pisco, I have a question in response to that. So I assume that people were very angry about not confirming a presidential pick.
I was extremely angry. Yeah.
Okay, so I can say that's bad, and at the same time say, shouldn't we not impede on the process of putting through a SCOTUS pick right now?
So so that it sounds like you agree with me that the rule is dumb, right? The rule was
I didn't
dumb.
say that at all. I asked you a question in response to your question.
So no, because rules need to be followed. You can't have people set up rules that are only used when it benefits themselves. That's like the definition of masochism. Imagine that we were both farmers on a farm, and we would take shifts, and I would say on my shift I get to sit back and watch you. That's what it means to be on shift. I get to sit back and watch you. Then it's your turn and it's your shift, and I want to change the rule of what shift means in that context. You have to be a total masochist, even if it's
Pisco. Are you giving me an analogy where I work in the fields and you watch over me?
No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is rules should be applied consistently, even if they're dumb rules. And that's the whole notion of stare decisis and precedent in general, is to follow it. And here, it's a case, I think, of not following new established precedent, which is 2016. Which I agree with you. The precedent goes towards in favor that this rule is dumb. But it was changed.
This is what I think personally. The precedent should continue as follows. The fact that it didn't occur, that's kind of grody, but I don't think that should be the chain that breaks the precedent. And I think we should absolutely put Amy Conan Barrett. I don't know. I can't say her name very quickly, but Amy in the SCOTUS seat. I hear she's part of Opus Dei. Which is pretty cool. I heard about them in the Da Vinci Code, so that's pretty cool. So
I'd very much like to just because he hasn't spoken yet. I'd like to hear from Wake the Beast. I'm sorry, I don't want to take over.
Sure, I do want to give it. Yeah, I got you. I'll give it to Wake, and then I'll give it to Turk right after. Does that sound good?
Thank you for your kindness, Vadim, and thinking about me. I appreciate that. I think right now we're having this discussion at the ethics level, which makes it a little difficult to see where our heart really stands on this matter. So if you all will walk with me, I want to ask you 2 questions that might make this more of a personal issue. Do you feel that it is morally, or dare I say, is it immoral for an individual to seek their own advantage? What do you think? Is it immoral if a person has an advantage and they seek it? And if you feel that it is not immoral, then do you disagree with Donald Trump perhaps taking advantage of an opportunity to seek an advantage of his own?
Yes.
Amy, the individual who he wants to put on the Supreme Court, is 48 years of age. On average, women nowadays in America live to be 81 years old. So just imagine yourself in his position. You have the opportunity to put someone in power who will reflect your views for at least the next 30 years. So my second question is, would you take advantage of that if you were in a similar position?
I can answer that. So a couple things. So one is, you're asking me as a matter of pure power or politics or realpolitik, would I do it? I think that maybe that's a difficult question. But at least you're being honest, right? At what this is. And I think that's the most honest approach. Say this is just a pure matter of political allowance, and we just can do it. So why not do it? But I think there's value, Wake the Beast, to having rules that are fair and consistently followed, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of power politics. I don't want setting a precedent that executives do whatever they can get away with. I want there to be norms that are followed, and I want there to be limits to what presidents do with respect to their advantages.
What President Trump has done is 100% completely within the law.
Absolutely. No one denies that.
Right.
So
what I would like for you to do, Pisco, since you said you would, is just take a stab at answering that question. Yeah. If you were in his position and you had a chance to put someone in power who reflected your views for the next 30 years, would you take advantage of that? Or would you let your enemy?
Is there the McConnell precedent?
In this context, though, with this much time on the even election, right? Or are you talking about just in general?
I think I'm saying something ethically wise right here.
No,
because
what I'm asking
is that people. Hang on. Let me just get this in. What you asked there was, you took a normative ethical statement that somebody is going to be going after their own advantage, which most people would say that's okay. But then you made a jump to the issue here is not just simply going after your own advantage. The ethical issue is you're going after your own advantage at someone else's expense. And a lot of people would say that if you can gain and hurt someone else, if you hurt someone else seriously, that's a big problem. Now, here's the issue. What we have going on right now is Piscopo is like totally right in the fact that if you have a system with rules, the rule of law, he can.
What is he right about?
My point is, if you have a system with rules, the rule of law must be upheld and authority figures must be consistent. If that does not happen, what happens is that people start thinking like I think and start thinking about rebellion, because if the rules do not apply to the people at the top, they do not apply to the people at the bottom. And I don't think that's something people want. I don't think people want to encourage insurrection in the United States. And if Donald Trump does it, it will encourage insurrection.
So I would also say,
I'll answer it at some point, Wake the Beast.
So I can go to
for a long time, my guy.
Sus, you've been talking practically more than anyone here.
Trying to talk, Vadim. I know you're angry. Just chill.
I'm not angry. I'm trying.
Okay. I don't care enough on either way. I'm gonna throw it to Turk because I see him raising his hand.
Yeah. So to answer Brenton's question, first you say that packing the courts and all these other things are not mainstream liberal stances. I posted an article from AOC, one of the more prominent, well-spoken figures of the Progressive Liberal Party. She claims she is part of the Democratic political
she's the far left of the
right?
Democratic political movement. She's politically isolated, and they mounted a campaign to get rid of her.
But you also said at the very beginning of this thing about the Green Deal and how that was not being perpetuated by the bias-leaning stuff, right? My point is,
I said that.
Sorry. My point is, AOC is not as far left as y'all think. She is definitely one of the younger people that's part of the progressive movement. And
I didn't say
that
she was far left.
That stance is being held and being propagated by media across the board.
She is the far left of the Democratic Party. There were
And
even
she
when
is
she
part
was
of the
elected,
Democratic Party. She is pushing voters. If you go check her Twitter feed, you go check any of the other progressive liberal people on Twitter, they are putting out the same information.
Pelosi
Aren't
and
we a
Chuck
little
Schumer
off
tried to
topic here?
eliminate her position, like
Yeah.
unilaterally eliminate her position, like get rid of her district.
She
So
is-
that she couldn't even be reelected. And then
She
when
was
that failed, they
reelected.
tried to mount yes, after a significant establishment attempt to oust her in New York. Now, the fact of the matter is that she does not speak for the majority of the Democratic Party. And of course, you can see that because she endorsed Bernie Sanders. And look what happened to Bernie Sanders. Again, you are taking
He's
the
a
far
key
left.
figurehead of the Democratic Party, and he is pushing
Yes, but first
policy
off,
agenda
Bernie,
items towards the platform.
Bernie was an independent longer than he's ever been a Democrat. And most establishment Democrats will say that Bernie is never a Democrat and does not stand for democratic values. He's the far left of the party now, along with figures like AOC and pretty much no one else.
Can we
And
talk about
I think it would be great if more people listened to
Diana
them, but they are
Presley,
not representative.
Okay, so my next thing is
We're really
you
off
also-
topic here.
No, I'm trying to address some of the Brenton statements. So then you also said that as a governmental body, we look for leaders that are both consistent and accurate in their way they lean. How do you feel about Hillary Clinton's stance on gay marriage or Biden's stance on prison reform back in the 90s? I think. How do you feel about
evil and disgusting?
You're not.
But you have people that are taking these places of power, representing a large amount of people that are not being consistent. That goes contrary to what you're saying and what you're wanting the other party to do. So that's disingenuous.
Okay. I'm gonna grab this and pull it the other way. I'm gonna give it to Vadim, and then after it's gonna go to Polar.
Okay. I really need to. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I really need to bring this up. I think maybe Polar spoke about this just offhandedly, but this really deserves some real thought here. Okay, I'm gonna read you guys a statement from Trump. He said, "We need 9 justices. We need that. With the unsolicited millions of ballots at this ending, it's a scam. It's a hoax. Everybody knows that. And the Democrats know it better than anybody else. So you're going to need 9 justices up there. I think it's going to be very important because what they're doing is a hoax with the ballots. They're sending out tens of millions of ballots unsolicited, not with them being asked, but unsolicited. And that's a hoax. And you're going to need to have 9 justices. So doing it before the election would be a very good thing because you're probably going to see it, because what they're doing is trying to sow confusion and everything else. And when they talk about Russia, China, and okay, the last few sentences don't matter. Why am I bringing this up? Okay. It's because he is straight up saying there that he needs a 9th judge to find that the Dems are cheating if they win the election and the election is close. This should be construed as a threat to the very foundation of our democracy. I mean, it's really like I think crisis level, to tell you the truth. If for a president to do such a thing is absolutely disgusting. So I really think that's another reason, because Wake the Beast asked the question, why should we not do it? We should not do it because Donald Trump has given every indication that he is going for this 9th seat in order to do just that. And I know that they already have a majority, but he's worried about John Roberts. His votes are not always predictable, and he very well might decide differently than Trump would like. So that is a huge fucking problem. And that's that. I really felt like that needed to be emphasized. So there you go.
Polar.
Oh yeah, so I think Wake the Beast question to Pisco was really interesting, right? So even though Pisco, you wouldn't even inherently have to answer this question, right? Because yeah, you will, but I get that. But like inherently, when we decide forms of ethics and what we should do as precedent, right? It'd be irrelevant if you were in his position or not. When we create these forms of precedents or laws, we don't necessarily look at every individual case to decide whether this law is specifically just, right? For example, you may sometimes see that a murder may be just in your opinion, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should legalize murder, right? So even if Pisco, to Wake the Beast, if Pisco didn't answer it and he says yes, that doesn't necessarily mean that we should design precedent around that either, because when it comes to our individual ethical systems, that may not always be the case.
My question was actually quite different from that, and it was very straightforward.
Would you do it?
Is it morally reprehensible to seek your own interests?
Sometimes. is the answer. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And there are interests. So I'm a utilitarian. I care about the well-being of society. So I would see a institutional and demonstrative value, signaling value inherent in having rule of law consistently applied. And if I was acting in the interest of the country, I, of course, even to the detriment of my own political interests, as someone who's I believe to be principled, sacrifice my immediate political interests for integrity and stability in our law. Now, that being said, I would vigorously fight against any such precedent in the sort of initial sort of stage, because I don't want more democratic impulse into our courts. I think what we have is fine. So I wouldn't have agreed with the rule as applied in 2016, but I have to be a total hypocrite, I think, not to apply that rule consistently in my own circumstance. So does that answer your question?
It does, but let me give you my response to your answer. So essentially, if you're saying that sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's not okay, then we are agreed that fundamentally it is not immoral to seek your own interests. So the second question is this.
No.
If you had the opportunity to put someone in power for the next 30 years who would voice your perspective and champion your causes, would you take advantage of that? Or would you leave it for your enemies?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
What you're telling me is that you have no stance on this. Sometimes is not an answer. There's nothing I can do at the sometimes except ask for clarification.
I'll clarify for you. So if there is a strong enough societal interest in preserving some norm, which would implicate and dictate that I not nominate that person, I would, of course, cede my right to nominate towards that institutional norm. I think I don't want to be a hypocrite, and I would be a hypocrite if I didn't answer in the affirmative. So to answer your question, it is very important who the nominee is, but even more important is stability and rule of law and consistency. And I would
go ahead.
And I would value that over my nomination, my particular nomination.
There's some other institutional norms that I'm sure you would feel differently about. Slavery was also an institutional norm, but that had to go and it went too, right? So essentially, what I mean to say here is that there's nothing wrong with seeking your own advantage. And if what you're saying is doing something perfectly legal, which the Constitution gives Donald Trump the right to do, if you're saying that this in and of itself is going to create unrest or civil disobedience, then the issue is not with Donald Trump. It's with the fact that his opponents do not respect the rule of law.
Wake the beast. Trump morality and law are
I hear three people speaking.
Wake the beast. Trump has the power to right now unilaterally pardon every single federal criminal convicted in court. Sorry, in federal prisons. If he did that, would you say, well, he has the power to do it, so we can't judge him?
I would certainly judge him, but he certainly has the power to do it. It's his prerogative.
The fact that he has plenary authority to do any kind of action within a specific set of that doesn't answer the question, the ethical question, right? You're just saying he has the power. I can still have opinions that say
you're basing an ethical question on a hypothetical that it's not even close to being relevant.
But the whole point of morality is to forbear when you have the opportunity to do something. Because if you don't have that system of morality in, and you always do what you want to do when you can get away for it, it's literally just a fight between everyone. It's a mad grab for power. And you can play that game. But I'm going to tell you, the longer you play that game, the more unstable things are going to get, and the more likely insurrection is going to happen. You are inviting your own destruction by seeking your own gain while similarly destroying norms and hurting others.
I don't believe that following the Constitution is destroying norms.
Wake the beast. What if Trump could say, make a speech to say, anyone who breaks a federal law to help me, I will pardon. He could say that. That would be legal. It'd be constitutional. There'd be nothing wrong with him saying that statement. But the mere fact that he said that, would you think that there's no way I could make any sort of ethical qualms about it just because it's in his power to do so?
And he can certainly go ahead.
He can
continue.
He could direct his attorney general and say, Mr. Barr, as a matter of American law enforcement, we are not going to enforce any laws that implicate my interests. I would like you to apply the law unequally towards my enemies and in favor of my supporters. He could say that legally. There would be like not a lot to say that he broke the law in doing that. He has the power to do so.
Why we shouldn't have a president?
Okay, well, that's a different question.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying that if the president announced that he was going to break the law
it's not
by applying it unevenly, is that what you're saying?
So it's not against the law for him to say, I'm going to pardon someone who breaks federal election law with respect to my candidacy, I will pardon you. I'm telling you right now. He hasn't broken any law whatsoever.
Yes, the president has freedom of speech. We are agreed on that.
Okay, but he also has the power to do what he's saying and to say that I will, in fact, pardon those people.
Yes, we are agreed. The president has the prerogative to pardon.
So is that moral?
Is that moral?
Is what moral? To pardon?
To pardon
in that manner, as he described it.
In what manner? Can you be more? You gave me a number of different examples. In what manner?
Where he says, anyone who breaks federal law to help me, I will pardon.
Is it moral? Go ahead.
Is it moral for him to do so, even though it's his plenary authority to pardon whoever he wants?
So let me put this in perspective. You're saying, would it be moral for Donald Trump to announce that he's going to pardon someone who planned on breaking the law?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Who did break? I'll say anyone who he's saying in advance, right? If you break the law, don't worry, I'll pardon you.
Okay. I don't see any similarity between this and following the appointment clause of the Constitution, but I'll humor you by answering your unrelated question.
It's related.
I feel that in that instance that would be immoral because that would attack the very foundation of the social contract. See, if every man is not satisfied in his home that the government is going to look after his interest, his life, his property, and his liberty, then that gives him carte blanche to take that weapon off of the mantelpiece and seek his own justice. So I don't see your question in any way related, not even close in the same category as what we're talking about, but I'll humor you with that answer.
Yeah, so I'll explain. So you just said it's immoral. You said, well, the president is able to appoint whoever he wants. He has that power. Constitution gives him that power. How could you possibly say that his appointment is wrong? So
we're not talking about whether or not his appointment is wrong. We're talking about his ability to seek his own interests within the confines of the law.
Real quick thing, presidents can't pardon themselves.
Not himself. He's saying
going to pardon himself.
For other people.
Everybody freaking knows that.
Okay, so
I guess both myself and my community misheard you and thought you said that. My bad.
No, you might have missed it while you were trying to distract everybody with your empty bottles.
Whoa, you have to wait. Are you high enough to think that these aren't like full? My guy? Do you not see the water jiggling?
Yeah, your cam isn't that good, so I can't really see, but one way or another, like you might have missed it while you were doing that and trying to distract people while other people were talking.
Oh,
just pay attention to what other panelists are saying.
I'm angry that I wrote a more successful book than you.
Are the jars of urine off camera or
no, there's no jars of urine. There's no jars of urine. Just some granola. Some granola. A PS.
Let me ask, do you sing that rejected Disney song and call yourself a boy?
Okay, this is very.
Can I say something?
Look, this is
just
very,
really fast.
Yeah, quickly. But look, this is very funny. I'm lol Wing so hard right now. But let's get back to topic. I'm gonna open up with wait.
They asked me. Okay, just saying.
I just want to say something real fast. Big ups to Dylan for going out of his way to put together a panel. I think that it would be in our best interest to show some respect to Dylan by maintaining a level of decorum. Maybe at least agreeing to avoid things like name calling and ad hominem attacks, just for the sake of the reputation that he's establishing for himself on Twitch. We have a chance to contribute to that or take away, and some of our banter is taking away from Dylan's reputation. Just something to be mindful of.
Absolutely.
Fair enough, I agree.
So I want an answer to the hypothetical and how it relates, right? So you're saying the president has the authority to nominate whoever he wants. No one denies that. No one denies that in my hypothetical, he has the authority to pardon or suggest to pardon anyone he wants. No one denies that. It nonetheless is the case that we can make ethical statements about someone's discretionary use of their plenary authority. Correct?
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that in order for me to see the similarity in your example, I would have to say that Amy, who is being nominated or put forth by the president is the equivalent of someone who broke election laws.
So-
And
so
that's
no-
where and that's where the comparison breaks down.
So I'm just
See,
establishing-
you're asking me about the president applying power to a criminal and using his power to appoint a Supreme Court justice who is not a criminal. This is not equivalent.
So Beast, I'm not saying that they are equivalent. I'm saying that you can't just say, it's not enough to say, well, he just has the authority to do it, right? That argument can't be enough. Because if that argument were enough, it would cover things like the election law example. You have to give more ethical reasons why this, in fact, is good. It's not enough to say it's within his discretion to do so, right? That's all I'm saying.
So you're saying that we can't point to the law and say following the law is good enough? You're saying that we need something superior to the law to say
Literally what morality is.
that it should be done.
So again, I point you to the hypothetical you just gave. That was totally within the ethic. It's not enough to say that the law allows it, right? When you're assessing ethics, you just said it wasn't enough.
You
So
mentioned you mentioned another example with slavery. Specifically, the law sometimes is not enough.
Yes or no? Wait, the Beast.
I heard several questions. What's your question?
You have. It's not enough to know that the act is or is not within the discretion of people within the or within sort of the confines of the law. That's not enough to know whether or not it's ethical or not. Correct?
It's not not all things that are lawful are advantageous. What's unethical about appointing her at this time? I think maybe that's what you should establish.
Okay, so
what's unethical about that?
It's unethical to establish a rule of precedent and apply it inconsistently for the benefit of one party, and then when the other party has similarly situated facts, not to apply it. That's unethical.
Is that what Donald Trump has done?
Yeah. The Republican.
So I think he's talking about what Mitch McConnell said, right?
Yeah, among others.
So let's quote it. Let me pull it up. I'll come back to me. I'll get it.
Sure. So I don't hear anyone defending the distinguishing factors, right? So there are the lame duck aspect, the fact that there's different parties controlling the presidency and the Senate. Those don't seem to be compelling reasons underlying the rationale of the rule as stated, which is to give democratic impulse or democratic control of the courts. So it can't be the case that the distinguishing factors cited by McConnell and others are satisfying to that supposed rationale.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that people who are in positions of power are going to use every tool they have to maintain that power, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on. If you think that the Democrats are somehow more moral than the Republicans are in their attempt to hold on to power, this is just a fundamental misunderstanding of how the American political system works. American politics is warfare, and the essence of warfare is deception. Both sides are playing voters.
So maybe I'm naive, Wake the Beast. And I acknowledge that in my opening statement, I said everyone's going to call me naive and that I'm asking for political consistency or institutional consistency, and they're going to tell me that I'm, pie in the sky. I think when we are as cynical as some people on this panel are, we'll never get better politicians. And I would respect a lot more if McConnell had said what you just said, like, we're just doing it because we can. But I don't want to hear this about face like, no, it actually is consistent, because it's not. And anyone, I think, would say that.
All right,
There's something very dangerous that was just said here, by the way, and I want to point this out. The idea that politics is warfare.
Yeah.
Warfare is politics continued by other means. Politics is the thing that we do so that we don't go to war. And if you start treating politics as war, pretty soon you're going to find yourself with a real war, and then a lot of people are going to get hurt who don't otherwise need to get hurt.
America's been at war. America's been at war for over 20 years.
Yeah,
you're right.
And I agree with your assessment that the people in power are just going out for their own advantage. This is, again, why I say we shouldn't have people in power, because when you concentrate the power in this way, it is damaging to everyone. There's a false dichotomy here between the Republicans and the Democrats. When if you leave the nomination, well, then maybe the Democrats will get the nomination. The same way as saying you've got two people who are looking to scrap in a room, and there is a gun between you. And if you grab and you pick up that gun, you could maybe shoot the other person or make them your slave or whatever. No, you don't say, well, I have to do this because otherwise they're going to pick up the gun, point it at me, and make me their slave or shoot me. The answer in this situation is destroy the gun. Once the gun's gone, there's not a problem.
Also, politicians.
Tell
by the way,
that to the 2 stabbings in France this past week.
Okay,
I'm not talking about. I'm talking about power. I'm talking about the ability to.
Wait. What about your hands and feet, my guy? Like you can still catch that smoke with just hands and feet.
I'm not talking about actual ability to do violence.
I'm going within your analogy. I'm saying that like just destroying the gun doesn't stop the fact that politics can still be absolutely violent.
That's a Nirvana fallacy. So destroying the gun in this metaphor has to deal with, for instance, just eliminating the position on the Supreme Court, period. Watch, nobody gets it.
So basically, so I get the point that Brent's trying to get at is that, like, for example, this is a form of unjust hierarchy. But I think there's I agree with like this first half of the statement, and I also agree with Pisco in this sense, right? Like, is it too much to just strive for accountability and consistency from our political advocates and our the people who represent us, even if in the past they've done these terrible acts, right? Like, I agree with Wake the Beast. We have been on quote unquote war, but we can still advocate and say they ought to act in these ways, and to ignore that, I think, is just as harmful.
I just want to say this wonderful point. Who are the politicians we most respect in our history? People like Abraham Lincoln, who had an election in the middle of a civil war, even though it wasn't, no one was expecting that he would have to do that. The fact George Washington, people who gave up political power, people who said, no, we should have checks and balances. These are the people I think that we respect most in our of our politicians. And they're honored because they respect not just power for power's sake. Power for power's sake. That is like the definition of like the Orwellian 1984, right? That power is the end itself, right? I don't want that to be the state of affairs. And I think at bottom, all of us respect more the politicians who put their own power to the side and for other concerns.
And then we also think about the aspect, but we also think about the power that they've gained by doing these things, right? So the consistency of people like Abraham Lincoln and George Washington have probably given their aspirations more power than a lot of other presidents. There's value in staying consistent. And like, as Pisco mentioned, they were consistent and they've tended to become some of the most, what we consider, powerful presidents in history. Maybe not in the essence of actual politics, but in our minds, in the American culture, and in American society. And what they do has stayed with us for almost the past 200 years.
Since there's silence, I wanted to just read verbatim what Mitch McConnell said in February 22 of 16. Of course, it's within the president's authority to nominate a successor, even in the rare circumstance. Remember that the Senate has not filled a vacancy arising in an election year when there was a divided government since 1888, almost 130 years ago. But we also know that Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution grants the Senate the right to withhold its consent as it deems necessary.
So I'm not saying that the arguments aren't, some of the people advocating for that position, they weren't contemporaneous statements that were consistent with the approach now. All I'm saying, though, is, first of all, not all advocates of that rule made those qualifications. And also, the qualification doesn't make sense. It's too limiting, right? So there's a problem of over-inclusiveness and under-inclusiveness. This is a problem of under-inclusiveness. If your concern is democratic input, it doesn't make sense that to have this divided argument rationale. It's a problem of under-inclusiveness. Your rationale, your solution to the problem isn't sort of opposite to the problem. Does that make sense?
I brain farted. Sorry. Can you? Shit, my bad.
So I'll say it again. So it's a problem of under-inclusiveness. The stated rationale of the rule is you want democratic input on the next Supreme Court justice. If you are limiting it to, okay, only when it's divided government, it looks like what it is, which is a totally ad hoc rule to protect your interests in the Senate because you just happen to have the majority in the Senate, and it's not based on the rationale, which is give people the democratic impulse. It shouldn't matter whether the House is Democratic or Republican, right?
So the Senate should be allowed to operate the way that the Senate majority leader has been elected to do, right?
So the Senate can do whatever the fuck it wants. It's the Senate, right? What I'm saying is, as a philosophical matter, as a principled matter, if you care about consistency and the rationale,
that is being consistent. There's precedent. He states it in there, and he states what the Constitution allows him to do. How can you be less consistent?
He is, in this era, he's consistent with his own statement, but it's not consistent with the rationale, right? So the rationale, if the rationale is democratic influence into the next justice, it wouldn't make sense to have a limiting principle that would specify that only in cases where the Senate is of a different party. Why would that be the case? If it
So what I would recommend, and we all should talk to our senators and congresspeople, is that we make these rules law, so that if we want to keep our senators accountable, they're putting their feet to the fire. You know, Lindsey Graham's already being put under fire for the stuff he said. All of these people should be held accountable.
Okay, so
I
agree.
agree that they all should be held accountable. One of the problems we have here, by the way, what I'll mention is that what's happening is that we have two groups of people in the same country who are supposed to be on the same side, treating each other as enemies. Now, that can happen with the jockeying of power. People love to do that, love to rah-rah, go team, go my team. But ultimately, the more extreme that gets, the more dangerous it gets for everyone involved, not only because when we have situations like, say, a global pandemic and a Senate locked up that can't act. The purpose of the country, if we are to go with something that I think Pisco would agree with, and I think it's idealistic, the purpose of the country needs to be to care for all of its citizens and take all of its citizens' wishes and desires into account, to mediate all of these together into a public policy that everyone can more or less live with, even if they're not happy.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has to compromise. It's not just the Republicans that come to the table and say, okay, I'll give you this. No, this was part of my leading in argument. You guys have already showed me your playbook. If things don't go the way you want, things are going to get out of hand. If you're going to want to act the way you're saying, you've got to show us that. We don't trust you. You're going to pack the courts.
I mean,
I don't want to.
I don't know that they're going to pack the courts again.
No,
I'd be very surprised.
I've already pulled up several other names of leading members of the Democratic Party that have mentioned that they are in favor or wanting to see how this goes.
I'm all for that. I'll admit that.
Vadim, you know what? Since we're being honest, like Vadim's being honest about it, about his partisanship, I'm going to be honest too. I want them to ram this through. Rest in peace to Ruth Bader Ginsburg's family. But I am now happy that Planned Parenthood's favorite cheerleader seat is now vacant, and I would like for it to be filled as quickly as possible.
Disgusting statement.
Yeah,
well, it's pretty cringe, bro.
It's not going to. You're not even going to get what you want. They're not going to overturn Roe v. Wade, and I'll tell you why they're not going to overturn Roe v. Wade. It is more valuable to have you idiots under their thumb saying, "Oh, help us overturn Roe v. Wade so that we can save all of these babies," than it is for them to actually save all of those babies. Because none of them actually care about
overturning Roe v. Wade would just return the rights and rights afforded to.
Yes, and they don't want that to happen. Roe v. Wade is more valuable to them as a wedge issue than it is to them as anything that's actually solved. It is the fight over Roe v. Wade that they can use to motivate their base. That is why, for instance, every time they get a majority, they don't overturn it. And suddenly all these conservative justices, we thought this was going to happen in the 80s. You get a conservative justice on there, you get the balance of power shifted. Oh, they're going to shift it. And oh, what happens? The conservative justice suddenly has a change of heart.
Maybe
because again, the point of this is to manipulate and control.
I'd really like Vadim, I was gonna throw it over to you.
Okay. Yeah, I know. The reason why I apologize, but the reason why I need to speak up is because I have a lot of things on the burner right now, and to be perfectly honest, with the exception of what would be my closing statement, I don't really have. I feel much more to add to the matter. So I'm just wondering, are we going to be going for another 20, 30 minutes? Because if that's the case, then I should just kind of...
No, we got 15 minutes left.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I'll stick around for that. I just had to know for time issues. Okay. So anyway, everybody resume your thing.
Now we have 14 minutes left.
So the judiciary and the court is not opining every day about, should there be a right to this? Should there be this? Should this political outcome happen? In fact, I think people are sort of apprehending the role of the court is not to answer political questions. Their goal is to answer legal questions. And part of the reason why Roe v. Wade hasn't been overturned is a respect for stare decisis. You saw it in the Chief's recent opinion in June Medical. That was a case acknowledging the undue burden standard in a case called Whole Woman's Health. And the court, Roberts, even though he was in dissent in Whole Woman's Health, said, for the purposes of stare decisis and consistency of the law, we are going to hold to that opinion in June Medical for an identical law. So the courts are not in the job of deciding things politically. Now, you can have your doubts about whether their political biases influence them, especially with respect to Clarence Thomas, maybe with respect to Sonia Sotomayor. There's valid arguments to be had there, but they would never admit to it. And I think it would be a disgrace to any litigant going to the Supreme Court to say, you should rule in favor of our litigant because they're a Democrat or because they respect this substantive right of due process. That's not what the court does.
Supreme Court justices legislate from the bench all the time, Pisco. Let's be real here, on both of our sides and both of our favors.
I agree
I
with
don't
the Proud
agree.
Boy.
It shows it's extremely apparent with like just how, like, for instance, like with both Roberts and Kavanaugh, how conservatives were kind of angry with them because they didn't
they didn't legislate from the
they
bank.
said that they would, right?
Wait.
Like people legislate on their true beliefs all the time, and like whatever like PR optics like related opinions statement they give. No, they legislate from the court all the time.
How do you explain Gorsuch, who in the Title VII opinion I think you might be referencing, said that based on his textualist reading of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act 1964, that both gays and people who with different gender affiliations were protected under private discrimination laws? How do you explain Gorsuch, who is, from a conservative background, who's from a federal?
So originally the text state don't have a stake of sexual orientation or anything like that. Like they're adding people into it, right? So it's one of those like broad encompassing things that like wasn't as like so apparent at that time when it was put in place that they would be like, oh, let's include people in the LGBT community because that wasn't really like, you know what I mean? So that's not the same thing as people like ruling in favor of like for instance, like the current Supreme Court battle with like the nuns who are battling against like their tax dollars going to Planned Parenthood, or the Christian Baker guy. Like, I'm saying people legislate from the bench all the time.
They're not legislating. They're having actual disagreements on judicial interpretation of laws. Read the opinions, Sushi. I beg you. So there is a concern from some members of the court that people are getting into political questions, but oftentimes the response is no, we're not legislating from the bench. It's not judicial activism. We're reading the plain text of the statute. That's what Gorsuch says.
But that's the ideal.
Judicial activism. Like for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. RGB was perfectly slated to stepping down in 2016, but after she found the fact that Trump was going to be elected, she overstayed, and said like in multiple citation readings because she wanted to be a staunch advocate and a defender of Roe v. Wade. People legislate from the bench all the time.
That's actually not correct. In fact, RBG has said that Roe v. Wade is really bad jurisprudence, and you can look that up. She was actually against the ruling on Roe v. Wade. She is pro-abortion. But she was against Roe v. Wade.
She wanted to defend it based on the precedent it would set and like basically like knock women back. Like that's basically what I meant.
Yeah.
Like
the point is, she was asked to if she had been interested in maintaining power, like for the liberals, she would have stepped down when people wanted her to step down in 2016, and she refused. She would not cast her ring into the fire because, again, she wanted to hang on as long as possible. And this has gotten us into a position where we have a dangerous balance that's getting ready to tip. You already see how crazy the country's going. Again, if the Republicans continue to throw their weight around like this, the more that the people of America do not see laws and customs respected at the highest levels, the more they will not respect laws and customs at the lower levels, which means more crime. It means more riots.
People don't people are doing it right now. They don't respect.
Yeah, but dude, you have no idea how much worse it could get.
We have to wrap it up with final statements. I'm just getting texts that say I need to get it at this really quick. So I'm going to have everybody make ending statements so I can get out of here. So I'm going to start with SuspectSushi in the top left-hand corner.
Like I said, pretty solid statement. It wasn't disgusting. I literally said, my condolences to their family, right? Rest in peace. But I'm also happy, right, that now we have a SCOTUS that can fit my political aims. It's not the same thing, right? I didn't say I was happy that she died or anything like that. So don't try to use your moral grandstanding when most people on the left aren't very moral in the first place. Anyway, so I know I said that just for you, Polar. I saw the little laugh. But yeah, basically, jam up the courts with as many conservative judges as possible. Let's shove 30,000 conservative SCOTUS picks. I don't care. I want my political views to be represented as widely as possible, and I have zero issue with it. That's basically it.
Okay, next is going to be the Turk.
Yeah, so I mean, the precedent's been stated. We've clarified the statements from the Senate Majority Leader, and I do believe if the Senate is going to do their constitutional duty, they have that right. And, you know, if the Democrats were in the same position, I would imagine everybody would be flipping sides and promoting each other's side. Like, this politics is not new. But all I got to say is, I said it earlier, and that's, you know, if we're wanting to mend the country and starting to heal the wounds and all that stuff, all sides have to come together and compromise. And until that happens, this is going to continue to happen. So I would strongly urge people to not think so aggressively towards their side and start to listen with open ears and open hearts and open minds to what other people say, and not just go half-cocked with your own opinions, because sometimes those opinions are false and you just need to open your mind.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Pisco.
Notice what you didn't hear in this conversation. What you didn't hear was a full-throated defense of the rationale as stated. This is about democratic accountability for the court, democratic input for the court. Why does it make sense to have these qualifications that are being imposed? Namely, that this is a lame duck session, or this is a split, divided branch. It shouldn't make sense. If it's the rationale is for democratic accountability, then it shouldn't matter whether it's a lame duck session or whether it's a divided set of the political branches. More to the point, the rule is silly that we shouldn't nominate justices during an election year. It's silly. It always has been silly. It was an aberration in 2016, but its insistence in 2016 is enough reason for, in 2020 now, to apply the rules consistently. I don't think that the Supreme Court job is or has been to enact policy, contrary to what's been said on this panel. I think our judiciary is independent and ought to be independent, and I'm hopeful that it will continue to be, even when Trump pushes through his nominee, as he's very likely to do. A refreshing bit of honesty, I think, we just heard from Sushi, which was, I don't care. I want my political ends serviced, and I just want conservative policies. I want abortion not dictated from the Supreme Court. I want the states to be able to decide abortion. That is honest, right? I think it's totally fucked up and not what the court is supposed to do, but it's honest. And I appreciate his honesty in supporting a kind of more political court. But that's not my vision of the judicial branch, and I don't think it should be any of your visions either.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Brenton.
Oh, wait.
Can Vadim get it? Because he's been asking.
Okay, Vadim.
The only reason why I ask is because my internet has been weird, and when it does this, I just might get knocked out. So if that happens, good night, everybody. I think I really, I didn't have a lot to contribute to this conversation because I said exactly what I believe at the top. But I just want to reiterate what I said a little bit later, which we didn't really delve into. What Trump said about the 9 justices and how he needs them, and he talked about voter fraud and all these other things. It is indeed a huge issue. This is not a conspiracy theory. Well, it is on his end. He's been talking about just bogus conspiracy theory, voter fraud, things about the ballots and whatnot that practically every decent source has completely debunked. There's no merit to them whatsoever. He does show signs that he wants this SCOTUS pick because he is hoping that if there is a close election that they will find in his favor. And that is just a huge problem. I can't emphasize it enough. And so I think for that reason alone that we should. Can anyone hear me right now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Spitting fire. Keep doing it.
It's just SuspectSushi is talking, so like it's confusing the hell out of me. But yeah, I said before, and it might sound melodramatic, but I think that this is exactly the way it should be phrased. It is an existential crisis for the democracy if we were in such a position where a president was allowed to win an election because of the fact that he was able to put in a Supreme Court justice who would fine for him in an unfair situation. So I'm not saying, we don't know what the votes will be. I mean, he could easily win it in a landslide. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but yeah, it could conceivably happen, and then it wouldn't be an issue. But that is, that's a real problem, and I think that people should really listen to what he said, because when I read that out loud, he speaks so incoherently. He rambles in such a weird way that I could see you not understanding precisely what he said. But if you look at that, it just came out a few days ago. He was speaking in front of a helicopter. Find that footage. It's pretty obvious what he meant by it. And we should all take that seriously, and we should all take it as a huge threat to our democracy. And I guess that's all I'm going to say. I mean, we're if I'm still around, if the internet doesn't knock me out, I guess we'll do goodbyes later.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna throw it over to Polar.
Okay,
cool. Yeah. So in this specific case, when we talk about somehow maximizing democracy when it comes to the courts, I think it's hyper hypocritical for the Republicans to be doing this, as Pisco mentioned. Even if they don't directly say it, the principle that is backing up this form of decision is not something they're consistent with. And even if I necessarily disagree with a law or precedent sent out, there's value in the concept of rules and precedents. I think what's the saying that, like, if they're your rules, if they're not your rules when they're inconvenient, or they're even your rules at all, I think that's a perfect example in this specific case. I think whenever we look at the people who represent us, or for example, the politicians or people who don't directly represent us at all, I think we ought to strive for consistency. We go through a lot of shit. We've been through a lot of shit in this country, but I don't think it's valuable to be complacent in this sense. And then lastly, to respond to Sushi, okay, why take morality from someone who probably subscribes to divine command theory and is probably extremely morally inconsistent? So, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Brenton. And is there anybody else who hasn't got... Oh, yeah, Wake. Okay, cool.
So, me? All right. Well, you guys heard it there. Jam, shove, me. I could make a comment about the psychosexual emasculation of the fascist mind, and the need to, for instance, reassert your masculinity, you sing a rejected Disney song, and call yourself a boy. Because honestly, it's pathetic. But what I will say right here is that's not the entirety of the right. That is just a portion of the right that has been empowered by the man-child with holes in his brain, Donald Trump, that is currently dying of the same thing his father died of, as he's in the early stages of dementia. That said, I can actually really respect conservatives on this panel like TheTerk. I think you have actually been, I think your perspective is a little warped, but I will agree that ultimately both sides do need to make gestures. As the Republicans are in power right now, I think a good gesture would be to actually make this gesture and move the nation towards healing so that we can continue to work together, because the government does not exist simply to promote the interests of one group. And any government that does do that is tyrannical and should be overthrown. Instead, the government exists to mediate all of our differences and get something that everyone in this nation can deal with. That includes the Republicans, the Democrats, and even the anarchists like myself. I would also say that I think Vadim actually brought up something really, really interesting in this, and that is the fact that as this nominee is rushed through, that's a very, very bad nomination process, because, again, these nominations are for life. And if we make a mistake, too bad. Now, I think that's stupid and should change, because I don't think anyone should ever get that level of power. It is dangerous, it is foolish, and it is ultimately going to be our undoing if we don't do something about it. But if we decide we must have this position of great power, we must have the president above the law, we must have Supreme Court justices serve for life, even though it's stupid, well, let's at least be measured and careful with how we do it. And so I think, when it comes to ending the riots, when it comes to getting this nation back on the same foot, what we need to do is we need to reject this egotistical me over everyone else mentality. And what we really need to do is move together as a community. And if we do not, what's going to happen is that you're going to see a further dissolution that could potentially lead to civil war. And I don't think anyone wants to see that here. All right. Thank you.
And
even if they do bad pantomimes of masculinity.
Okay, and to wrap this up is Wake the Beast. Thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I'm ending it early. I just really got to go deal with this thing.
Thank you, Dylan, for your time and your patience. The strong are obligated to protect the weak. This means that nation states are inevitable because the social contract is the syringe through which justice, peace, and security is administered by the strong on behalf of those who cannot advocate and champion their own cause. What this means is that right now, since we live under the false light and illumination of democratic bureaucracies that are massively ineffective, we are forced to sometimes turn to fool's gold like anarchy, saying, well, if we can't have this system, why not have any government at all? The problem with this thinking is this. The moment two men in that anarchical system get together and decide to take a stand against what they perceive to be injustice, they have formed the nucleus of a nation state. And once more men gather to their cause, well, you're right back to where you started, as a nation. So I stand behind this unequivocally. We will not have peace on this planet until kings, philosophers, and poets sit on a throne that's worthy to carry their weight under the protection of a contract that socially underwrites their authority in a way that cannot be moved as easily as a goalpost. I want to say this too to some of my panelists here. It's a lot of fun sometimes to take the piss out of people, but just a little aside, oftentimes the only thing that people remember about you is how polite you are. And something my grandmaster expressed to me many, many times over the years is that the strongest people you will ever meet are always polite and kind. So I know sometimes we're very eager to demonstrate to people how much we know. It's more important that you demonstrate to people how much you care about them. And I'll say this to Dylan. I'm not sure what's going on with you and your grandfather, but I know that you've been here for a lot of us, helping a lot of people here build their communities. And I know you've been here for your community. So I hope everything goes okay. But if not, I hope you will allow us and your community to be here for you like you've been here for us over the past few weeks. Hope everything goes well. Godspeed and good luck, everybody.
Thank you so much. You all have a blessed day, okay?
Yeah, you guys too.
Thank you, bro. Thank you so much, Dylan.
Awesome.
Good luck.
Yeah, Dylan, good luck with what you got going on.
Hey,
Thanks.
Beast.
Okay, let's get out of there. Hey, this is Dylan. I just want to let you know you can find my content live at twitch.tv/DylanBurnsTV. You can also find my link to my Twitter and Discord in the description. I hope you continue to give me support, and I appreciate you for watching my videos.